Started shortly.
There's only one so far. Oh, there's two now. So far online, but
You
they
wanna
haven't,
sit
I
over
don't
here,
think
Tom?
they've been let in.
Okay, they need a, it takes us.
Oh, here they are. Oh, but those are, so it looks like one, two are members of the public. Name isn't familiar, but I don't know why. So there's a couple of names online. Todd, there's three, I think, two or three names.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
Todd, do you want to sit here next to? Wow. All right.
Touch my watch.
Let's see here.
Civil year. Yeah. All right. Hello, everyone. I am Brad Sherburne, the chair of Manhattan Community Board 5, and we will begin tonight with our public hearing. So I will hand it over to our first vice chair, Todd Shapiro. Get away. Is this on? Can people online hear? Yeah, it's on. Okay.
Second. Where's my script? Hey, everybody. Good evening. This is the public. Can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me now? Okay, good evening. This is the public hearing of Manhattan Community Board 5. I'm Todd Shapiro, and I'll be your chair for the public hearing. During this public hearing, members of the public are invited to speak for 2 minutes per person on the subjects set forth in the agenda for this public hearing or on any topic that relates to the affairs of the community district. If you would like to address the board before it votes on any matters tonight, now is your opportunity to do so. Although there will be a public session during the full board meeting later, that public session will be at the end of the meeting after all of the votes have taken place. So if you want to address the board on any matters before it votes tonight, now is the time to do so. If you'd like to speak during the public hearing, please use the raise hand button now. When you are recognized, we will allow you to speak, but you must unmute yourself. In order for you to be heard, make sure you do that. Okay, we will begin the public hearing with our first person. So I'm looking here in-house.
Nope, not that one. This one.
Oops. Oh, I'm looking here in-house. We have our own, Charles Nye. Come on up, Charles. Okay, Charles, there you go. You got Tristan on your right. Excuse me, on your left.
Thank you, Vice Chair. My name is Charles Nye. I have spoken to the United States Justice Department Access Americans with Disabilities Act team. They've informed me that this community board, Vice Chair, is a Title II entity. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, Subpart E, Section 35.160, this is a Title II entity and has to follow the equal effective communications. Under Title III, section 36.30, it lists all the auxiliary aids that needs to be provided to either a member of the public or a community board member with a disability. This does not need to be made through a reasonable accommodation request. In fact, the only issue is if the request would bring in a undue burden to this community board And I therefore respectfully am informing this community board that when it comes to voting, I will be doing a voice vote, as that is the method of effective communication that I find most comfortable. And it doesn't cost any money for me to speak. So I think we're going to be okay with that. And I would like also for community board members to say their full names so I know who they are and give a description of themselves. For example, I would say, my name's Charles Nye. I am a white guy with dark brown hair, black Ray-Ban sunglasses, a black sweater with white Swarovski crystal braille letters down the right side of my arm and around the neck. I forgot what they say, and blue jeans and blue sneakers. If this does not happen, I will remind you guys through a privilege personal question under Robert's rules, where I can just raise that at any time and interrupt and say that reminder. And if that still does not happen, then I will sadly have to make a complaint to the United States Department of Justice, who have informed me that they will gladly take my complaint and will send a violation. So I hope I won't have to do that. So, Mr. Vice Chair, if you could also ask the public speakers to please give a brief description of themselves when they speak, that would be fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. You always speak very eloquently on behalf of the blind and disabled. So that being said, we're going to move on to our next on-site speaker. Oh, so we're not going to go online. And we've got, okay, could you please use the raise hand features online? I'll recognize you and we can work our way down the list. Do we have anybody? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, I guess, Marissa, do we have anybody, else on site that has come in? Okay, so we're going to move on to the elected reps, and I'm going to pass it back over to Brad.
All right. Thank you, Todd. I will now call to order the full board meeting of Manhattan Community Board 5. I am Brad Sherburne, the chair. We will start our full board meeting tonight by hearing from the elected officials that are in attendance and wish to address the board. The elected officials will be followed by any representatives of other electeds who may report to the board for 2 minutes each. The board then enters into business session, which consists of an electronic vote to accept the December minutes, chair's report, committee reports and resolutions with a question and comment period and voting. And then we will move to the bylaws discussion, which we will follow then with new business. Lastly, we will conduct a public session for those who would like to address the board on any item that was not covered during the meeting and that they did not speak to the board about during the public hearing, followed by adjournment. So I will start this meeting calling on elected officials, which I do not believe there are any in attendance. So we will then move to the elected representatives, and we have 2 in person with us. So we'll start with Evelyn Collado from the Controller Lander's office. Thank you. Yeah, right here, please. Is there a microphone up there for you?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Evelyn Collado. I'm the Manhattan Borough Director for New York City Comptroller Brad Lander. And thank you for the opportunity to have us present tonight. There are a couple of things that I want to bring your attention to tonight. The first one is we just released earlier this week, Comptroller Brad Lander report on a safe plan to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illnesses in New York City. So we conducted some research, put forward a number of recommendations that include improving city hall management and coordination across agencies. And that also is based on a housing first approach to homelessness in New York City. Housing first and wraparound support services. I also want to remind everyone, if they haven't visited us online of our, last year's biggest successes, including pension funds annual investment returns of 10%, first ever, largest ever for the Comptroller's Office. We did this, save almost $2 billion to New York City, and did it while, committing to responsible investing with shareholder engagements on climate and worker rights policies. We also approached the housing crisis by making the largest investment ever in preserving affordable housing for our office, saving 35,000 rent stabilized units that were put at risk by the collapse of Signature Bank. And we also increased investments that are under management by MWBE managers by over $6 billion for a total of 37 increase since the comptroller took office.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Ben Lowenstein from Assemblymember Simone's office.
I hope everyone enjoyed their holidays. So I'm here to talk to you all about a slate of solutions the Assembly members were proposing to tackle the interconnected issues of substance abuse disorder, homelessness, and mental illness in our community. The full report can be read on our website. Housing is a top priority, and we must increase the quantity and quality of supportive housing. One of the best ways we can do this is by converting contracts from the New York State Supportive Housing Program to the Empire State Supportive Housing Initiative. Outreach workers are on the street every day trying to connect individuals with necessary services. Funding full-time nurses and people with backgrounds in clinical psychology to be a part of this outreach will greatly improve their success. Interagency hubs like the Midtown Community Improvement Coalition have been successful at addressing quality of life issues in their communities by gathering relevant agencies and organizations, and they should be invested in and expanded. We must also pass the Supportive Interventions Act, which will update the criteria that allows for people to be involuntarily committed to the same standards used by almost every other state in the country. This will help authorize professionals to get people the help that they need. And this bill will also increase the number of professionals who will be allowed to make these interventions. Last year's budget invested $1 billion into psychiatric beds. In addition to making these beds operational as soon as possible, we must invest in extended care facilities such as the Manhattan Psychiatric Center on Randall's Island, which is an already built public hospital that's operating far under capacity. Assemblymember Simone will also be introducing legislation to mandate participation in mental health programs for people who have committed violent misdemeanors but are dismissed because they're unfit to stand trial. In cases like the death of Michelle Go in 2022, people with severe mental illness have had their cases dismissed after committing violent crimes and have then gone on to commit even more violent crimes. The rest can be read on our website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we will move online. So starting with Lori H. from Councilmember Bottcher's office.
Hi, thanks, Brad. Good evening, CB5. Yes, Lori from Councilmember Eric Bottcher's office. I have a very brief report tonight. I just want to review a handful of wins in the budget for our district. We were able to get $210,000 in funding for additional sanitation services and graffiti removal district-wide through ACE programs for the homeless, plus another $93,000 for supplemental sanitation service vehicles for ACE, $50,000 for tech upgrades for libraries in Council District 3, and $3,250,000 for the renovation of the Roundabout Theater Company's Studio 54 Broadway Theater. There are too many wins to name. Those are just a sample. And then I just want to discuss a little bit our forums. Last year, our office hosted multiple forums with commissioners and agency leaders. Our final one of the year was with Richard Aborn. He's the president of the Citizens Crime Commission. We had 200 people attend online. Right now, we're looking to hold our next one with Jessica Tisch. She's the new, as you know, NYPD commissioner. The forums run about an hour with a Q&A with the forum guest. And I will send any information to Marissa to post. And that's about it for me. More to come.
All right, thank you, Lori. Okay, next up, we have Alex Marinides from Senator Krueger's office.
Hey, thank you, Brad. Hi, everybody. My name's Alex Marinides. I'm a community liaison for Senator Krueger. Just wanted to give you all a quick update. I hope you all had a happy holiday and are enjoying the new year so far. So the most prominent piece of recent news for many of us is the long-awaited start to congestion pricing. While we are waiting for more medium to long-term data on the effects it's having on traffic patterns, revenue generated, and air quality, anecdotally, we have heard from many constituents that they have seen an impressive reduction in traffic over the past few days. So Senator Krueger, as many of you know, has long been a strong supporter of congestion pricing and is looking forward to seeing the well-documented health, environmental, and traffic-related benefits play out here in our district. That being said, if you believe that you are eligible for one of the exemptions to congestion pricing, you are more than welcome to call our office to learn more. And I'm Senator Krueger's Director of Transportation Policy, so I would be the person who would be helping you with that. And I'm always happy to talk to people if they're interested and if they think they may be eligible for an exemption. So a few recent updates from right before the session started. Senator Krueger was thrilled to see her bill, the Climate Change Superfund Act, signed into law by Governor Hochul just before the new year. This law will collect $3 billion a year from major polluters such as fossil fuel corporations and raise $75 billion over the next 25 years to address climate change and to mitigate its impact on our state. This will also, by extension, save New York State taxpayers $75 billion over 25 years because they're taking it from the most polluting, largest corporations. This money has to come from somewhere, and Senator Krueger believes strongly that the companies that are causing the climate crisis should be the ones to pay to address it. And this is especially relevant given the terrible footage that we've all seen from Los Angeles over the past few days. So our office will continue to fight strongly for our climate and our environment in the coming session, and I will be giving you all an update on how the budget's going next month. But thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, next up is Alex Garcia from the DA's office. You're still muted, Alex.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Garcia. I'm a Community Engagement Coordinator for the Manhattan District Attorney. I have some announcements to make. I want to remind everyone about our youth program. Our single info session for prospective applicants for the high school internship program is coming up on February 6th. Applications opened on January 13th and are going to be closing on March 12th. We're also increasing our annual investment in CBOs to work proactively to prevent youth gun violence. We increased it from $200K to $300K. And this is all paying younger New Yorker stipends to participate in a meaningful programming to use their time constructively throughout the summer. And we're going to continue to host a series of trainings on trespass notices for local businesses and our partners in law enforcement to coordinate on best practices to support successful prosecutions and meaningful case outcomes to address shoplifting recidivists. Please reach out if you're interested in learning more. And I'm going to give a quick update on some cases. There was an indictment of an individual for fatally suffocating a woman outside the Midtown Hotel in October. We also just announced the indictment of an individual for a Midtown subway assault that took place on 50th Street and 8th Avenue in late December. And lastly, finally, the indictment of Ramon Rivera for the triple stabbing that took place in November, both in the 17th and 10th precincts. But of course, this is relevant to the wider Midtown community as a whole. For any information or more case updates, you guys can look at our press release on our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, next up is Brocker Rosenberg from the Borough President's office. You are muted still, Brocker.
Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. It's great to see everyone, and I hope you all had a great holiday season and a good start to the new year. Community board applications will be available next week. We'll make sure to reach out to all members who are up for reappointment, and we really encourage you to spread the word because we're going to need to welcome we're excited to welcome any new members from the pool of applicants that this application brings. So please spread the word. We have some upcoming events that our office is hosting over the next few weeks. We'll have official flyer information, which we can share as they become available. But on February 4th, we'll be hosting a property valuation event with the Department of Finance at 1 Center Street for single-family homeowners and whole co-ops and condos. And our Black History Month event will be February 18th. On the policy side, Borough President Levine released and announced our major expansion of free childcare in New York City, proposing the expansion of pre-K and 3K to kids 6 weeks old through 2 to close the 0 to 2 gap. Also, New York City newborn support program, getting cash into the hands of families who need it, as well as a series of reforms needed for providers and families to provide childcare. You can read more about that on our website. And we also, just today, are announcing an update to our Breaking the Cycle plan, which is to address the behavioral health crisis in the city. And it includes using already existing building to expand inpatient bed capacity in the state's transition to home program, and increasing the number of hospitals that can refer patients to inpatient beds, raising the number of extended care units and beds in those units, and along with several other reforms. I know I'm going to run out of time here. But you can read more about that on our website as well as on our president's Instagram. Highly recommend you look into that. And thank you all.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next up is Kat Deus Veloso from Senator Gonzalez's office.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone has been doing well. My name is Kat Veloso. I'm Senator Gonzalez's Communications Director. And before I get into our office updates, I did just want to share that the Senator is running a little bit late, but is on the way to join the community board meeting in person. So she'll be there soon. Starting with our updates with congestion pricing now in effect, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office if you have any questions on how this will affect you, your community, or if you have any issues applying for exemptions. We just did our Manhattan office hours this month on Tuesday. So the next one will be on Tuesday, February 11th from 2 to 5 p.m. And this will be at the Kips Bay Library. We have an upcoming event next weekend. It is a pet adoption event partnered with the New York Animal Care Center, and this will be held at the Chocolate Factory in Queens. It's on the Chocolate Factory Theater in Queens. It'll be on Saturday, the 25th from 12 to 4 p.m. And we really look forward to seeing community members adopting pets in this new year and helping empty out their shelters. In terms of legislative updates, the Senator's bill on regulatory guidelines for the state government's use of AI was passed right at the end of the year. And we're really excited to have this bill get signed and be the first of its kind in the nation to provide comprehensive labor protections for state workers whose jobs may be impacted by AI. The bill also requires the disclosure of any automated employment decision-making tools that state agencies may use. Now that the 2025 legislative session has started, the Senator is really excited to introduce her priority bills like the healthcare assessment, chatbot disclosure, and the GAP fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right. Next up, we have Kathleen from Assemblymember Epstein's office.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for passing that along. I want to post the CB5 report from our office in the chat. And if you guys have any questions or anything, please feel free to email or call our office. We're going to start off with some events that we have coming up. We have Lunar New Year celebration at the beginning of February, February 9th. We have a Black History Month event at mid-February. If any of you are interested in attending, please RSVP or call our office or email, and we'd be more than happy to have you all. There are some last year updates that I want to share as well. Assemblymember Epstein did a couple of investments. He invested in the Union Square Academy for Health and Sciences. So he announced an event for their new dental lab. We were able to give over 1,000 coats to people in the district and different community centers, schools across the district as well. And we were able to have another vegan roast giveaway, which was really exciting for Assemblymember Epstein, who's a vegan. And we also had an art opening in our office that is still there today. We have an exhibit in our office, so if you ever pass by Avenue B and you want to just pop by and see the art that we have, please feel free to come in and chat. We had some community events such as the e-waste recycling at Union Square, and we were able to attend a retirement party for Bellevue's hospital CEO, Bill Hicks. If you all have any legislative questions or specific targeting questions about congestion pricing, please call our office, come with your questions, and hopefully we can help you out with those. Assemblymember Epstein's back in office now in Albany, so that would be exciting. Hopefully in February I could give you more updates about what's going on up there. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Kathleen. Okay, next up we have Biani Rodriguez from Councilmember Rivera's office.
Hello, my name is Biani Rodriguez and I am from the office of Councilmember Rivera. I'll try to keep it brief. Last month, we had a wonderful toy giveaway for the kiddos. We were able to help over 100 families with toys. I also wanted to let everybody know that we are still looking for volunteers for participatory budgeting during the spring. As a reminder, one of the winning projects last year was upgrades to Evelyn's Playground, which is located at Union Square. So participatory budgeting is a great way to get involved in your local community and have an impact. I also wanted to let everybody know that we are having a Local Law 97 webinar on January 28th at 6 p.m. This is an online event, so I'll just go ahead and send the link in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Robin Forst from the mayor's office. Robin, are you there?
Hi, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Oh,
Yes, we
yeah,
can.
great. Okay, great. Sorry. Happy New Year, everyone. I just wanted to highlight a few things as we kick off the year. First, taking a look at last year, I wanted to let you all know about a number of quality of life improvements that were made under the Adams administration. Over 1,300 illegal smoke shops were shut down during 2024. 19,000, more than 19,000 actually illegal guns were removed from our streets. And 70% of trash has now been moved into container bins. Finally, just in terms of crime, there were 10 straight months of crime, decline in crime this past year. So some good news in the quality of life department. Today, the mayor announced the preliminary budget for fiscal year 26. The budget is announced at $114.5 billion, which is about $2 billion more than the prior year. Over the next weeks and months, there will be a lot of discussion, negotiation, and hearings with the city council and with members of the public. So stay tuned for that. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, and then I think last but not least, we have Franklin Richards from Councilmember Power's office.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you folks again. Happy New Year. Just two quick updates. The Midtown South mixed-use plan is set to go before city planning for certification on Tuesday. MSMX, as it is called, seeks to foster a vibrant 24/7 mixed-use neighborhood across 42 blocks of Midtown South. MSMX focuses on central located areas where new housing is not permitted under today's half-century-old zoning rules. The plan aims to expand housing opportunity, include affordable housing, and support economic activity. I know there's a big conversation about that happening tonight here. So I'll be tuning in to listen to that. But if you have any questions about the process, the land review process itself, feel free to reach out to me at frichards@council.nyc.gov or at 212-818-0580. And second, the application for a city council funding for fiscal year 26 is now open. Organizations who want to apply for council expense funding must do so by February 19th. And more information on that can be found on council.nyc.gov/budget. And also, capital funding applications are due by March 20th at 5 p.m. Again, if you have any questions about that process, you can call our office at 212-818-0580. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Franklin. Okay. So seeing no more elected representatives, we will now enter into the business session of the board, where, as I mentioned, only board members are allowed to speak. Board members attending virtually, please remember to have your videos on during the meeting. So we are now entering the business session, starting with a vote to accept the December minutes. May I have a motion? And a second? Okay. So typically, now we begin with a roll call vote to approve. So Zool made the motion, and then David Shapiro made the second. Absolutely. Typically, we would now begin with a roll call vote to approve December minutes, but with the passage of our prior round of bylaw revisions, we are now going to handle things a little differently. Since our last meeting, we have been reviewing a number of options for ways to conduct the vote virtually and intend to have a long-term, simple, and accessible solution. But for this meeting, we will be conducting our votes using two separate Google Forms. You should have all received an email from the board office yesterday, which you should open now with two links. The first link, called December 2024 Minutes Approval, in the email, which is only for this vote, should say minutes at the top of the form once you click it, and will look like what you are seeing on the screen now. Please use this link, which is now active, to cast your vote by selecting one of the options. Please also remember to include your full name in the fields at the top of the ballot. If you are in person and do not have a device capable of casting the vote, or if you're having issues or need assistance, the board office is available with additional devices for members to cast their votes. For members attending virtually, if you are having any issues casting your vote, our Assistant Secretary, Catherine, will assist you in casting your vote. Please let us know in the Zoom chat if you are having any issues, and we will provide her phone number. We will use this vote to ensure that everyone understands the process. There's a little bit of kind of training wheels for this, and we will keep voting on this item open. Let's try for the next 5 minutes, pending all members in attendance being able to successfully cast their votes. So before we sort of start that 5 minutes, are there any questions? Okay, so please cast your vote for the approval of the December 2024 minutes. She's the virtual, not the in-person. The board office is the in-person. And Justin. Are you actually having trouble? You're just being. You don't need to, you don't need to have your Google. everyone has voted. So is anyone that we're not aware of having issues voting? Because if not, we will move on to we'll keep it moving.
Minutes approved 29.
And the minute
Approved, 29.
in favor, abstention. Okay,
We did it.
we did it, everyone. One down. So for the remainder of our votes this evening, please use the second link in that email, which should say at the top, once you click it, resolutions, letters, and bylaws. This link is the one we will use for the remainder of the votes for the evening. This link will become active as soon as we begin the chair's reports and will remain active until we reach the new business portion of the agenda. All votes are on one single ballot, as you can see here. Tristan, could you please put that up? Thank you very much. And so this means you will only be clicking, I believe it says submit at the bottom, one time once you have registered all of your votes for the evening. You may register your votes as we go throughout the evening or enter them all at the very end. That's up to you. But you will only be clicking submit one time for all the votes tonight when you are satisfied that you have heard enough and your mind is made up. Members should only cast votes on the items for which they were present for deliberations. If you are unable to attend the entire meeting, or if you may have joined late, I don't think we have that tonight, but generally speaking, if you join late, please select the absent option. We will be monitoring the link throughout the evening to address any issues or concerns. If you wish to change your vote after submitting it while the vote is still open, you should receive an email link because you entered your email within that form, and that will give you a link that you can go back and make any corrections. If there are any issues, please make the board office or our secretaries aware, and we will assist you. Are there any questions on the remainder of the votes? Nancy? Yes, Nancy. You deleted the email? Okay. Marissa.
Tristan, you got
All right, Tristan is on it. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I am going to take us out briefly of our business session because Senator Gonzalez is here. Yes, so now is your time. Please take the, yes, please.
Hi, it's on? No.
Can people online? Neil, can you hear? Give us a yes or no. Yes, you're good.
Just triple checking. But hi, everyone. It's so good to be here. My name is Kristen. I am the state senator for District 59. I know my team was able to present a little bit earlier, but I wanted to personally come and wish you all a happy new year and provide some quick updates on my end with the start of our second term and our new legislative session. And then I'm happy to take some questions from all of you to make sure that we're covering anything of interest. I would certainly love to hear from all of you as we start the year. What are some of the top priorities for this board, some of the top issues that you all are thinking about so we can make sure that our office is addressing them appropriately? So starting with updates, I think you've heard through my team, we had our swearing in last week. And as we start this new legislative session, I have maintained my chairmanship or chairwomanship of Internet and Technology. And I've actually gotten a new chairwomanship position as well, and am now the chair of the Elections Committee in the State Senate. And I think that's really significant because, as all of you know, our democracy has been under threat for some time. And our Elections Committee is one of the best ways that our state ensures that we're maintaining the integrity of our elections, and as an extension, trust in our democracy and strengthening of our democracy. And we did that this past week by passing a comprehensive elections package. And some of the bills on that list included things like automatic voter registration through the DMV to ensure that folks can easily register to vote. It included other funding and measures to ensure that there are full-time BOE positions, even in some of the smaller counties. And it also ensured that we, and this is a bill that I personally carried and passed this week, had a provision to have any public-facing website have a disclaimer that is visible that it is funded by a PAC, if it is. And I think that's really important because as we have more and more money coming into our elections, we want to ensure that every single voter knows if that site is being funded by certain different PACs, certain interests, and certainly believe that this is a common sense measure that should be passed through both houses. So that was a little bit about the work that we did this week. At the end of last year, I was also able to pass one of the most significant AI bills in the entire country. We had the governor sign the Loading Act, and I bring that to this space because it's the first bill in the entire country that has labor protections. And for so many of us who work in any sector, we're already starting to see the beginning of AI impacting our roles. And as we move forward, we know there's going to be automation, but by passing a bill that says that we have labor protections for government workers, we can set a standard to start protecting workers in other sectors as well. And I have heard a lot of good feedback. Want to continue doing that work. We've introduced the New York AI Act, which now looks to regulate the private sector to make sure that we're capturing all this incredible innovation with AI, but doing so in a way that's responsible and, puts all of you at the forefront of our, legislation, but forefront of our regulations with clear consumer protections. So that's a little bit about our legislative agenda. Again, I'm not going to go into the community stuff because I think that's what Kat covered. Oh, and then before I forget, I noticed there was an ask for some description. I am wearing a brown, I'm wearing a brown blazer and brown turtleneck. I have brown hair and gray pants. And yeah, and with that, I'm happy to take questions from all of you.
Are there any questions? Starting, David, go ahead. Take a mic.
Need a mic, Dave.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you, is there any, regarding crime and safety, what is on your legislative agenda for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this week, the governor also had her State of the State, and that kicks off our budget process. So as a lot of you know, the state budget is $230 billion. And the main function of our session, which runs from January to June, is to pass that budget and make sure we're investing in things like public safety. And the governor had some proposals around ensuring safety in our MTA. She proposed having more cameras, proposed having more officer presence. And now what we'll do is work with the legislature, both the Senate and the Assembly, as well as her office, to ensure that we're passing versions of that represent what all of you want. So I'm certainly here, and our office is open to receiving feedback. If you like what you're hearing, if you want to see other things done that haven't been represented, feel free to reach out. But what I'll add is, I don't have a driver's license. I cover a 3-borough district in Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan. And I take the train and the bus and occasionally the ferry pretty much every week. And, I've seen firsthand some of the concerns just around, public safety, especially in our transit system. And it's top of mind for me. So I know that's something we're going to go back and address, but yeah, happy to receive.
It'd be great if you could, when you have sort of your views or your thoughts, to be able to present that to this board.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can add some of our personal views and elaborate. I have a public safety platform that is on our website, but I think some of the things for me that has been important in this role is investing in our community and investing thoroughly. I don't just want to focus on what happens after a crime is committed. I want to focus on what we can do to see a decrease in crime and work proactively with our district attorneys, with community organizations and more to ensure that we're seeing a decrease and we're making sure that we're intervening in the steps before a crime's committed. And that looks like investing in our, primary and secondary education. It looks like investing in mental health services. An example of that was recently, I think yesterday actually, the mayor expanded beds in my district in Bellevue Hospital. We've been asking for that for a long time. So I'm happy to see that it's happening, but it's certainly not enough. And having, I've been fighting against the Mount Sinai Beth Israel closure, having more hospitals close with mental health beds is not going to help us get there. So, seeing that type of investment, I think moving forward is going to be a priority.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Todd.
Okay, I've got something and then Charles says something.
Yeah.
So just this.
No, Todd, you need a microphone first. Right next to you. Yeah. Thank you.
Senator, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me now?
I can hear you.
Neil, can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear?
How about now? Yes.
Yeah.
Neil, give that.
Here, just take this one, Todd.
Okay, well.
Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my name is Todd Shapiro. I'm Vice Chair of CB5. Just this morning, I was at the Borough Board meeting and we were speaking about a lot of the issues that are going to be discussed tonight, how to vote, how to use electronic voting, how to use voting in a way that will allow people with disabilities to be full participants. And we actually heard that at the last budget process for the city, they showed absolutely no interest and pleaded poverty. So thank heavens you're on the technology committee. What can you do to make available state funding in the form of grants and additional support that community boards like ours can, with all the responsibilities under the law that they have, to do things like hybrid sessions and have equal access for everybody? What can you do to help us?
Yeah, that's another phenomenal question. We were supportive of having hybrid meetings for folks who, for anyone who may find it challenging to come and do what we're doing right now, which is be present for several hours, whether you're immunocompromised, differently abled, or someone who's caring for another person or a small child. And so that was the first step. I'm happy to work on making more funding available to achieve that vision of a hybrid system. But what I would also say is I am an advocate for all of you. I am happy to go to the borough president who oversees community boards and work with him to make sure that we're getting city funding as well to support those efforts. So it's a combination of both passing the right legislation in Albany, and happy to talk more offline about how we could possibly do that in this session. But also advocate for you right back here on the ground. And Mark Levine, our borough president, has been a really good colleague, and I will raise this with him to see if he has any existing proposals.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Charles? Your turn.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm Charles Nye, community board member who has a visual disability, who's blind. Thank you so much for giving your description. I really appreciate that you took my words seriously and that you care about people with disabilities. And I hope others tonight can follow your lead. The Americans with Disability Act is very important. And, as we know, voting is very important. I was very proud to be able to vote in the US elections with the device for people who are blind and vote independently without anyone helping me. Under the Act, when someone has someone who is acting as a person's note taker or reader, I just remembered they have to be impartial. And my concern is tonight we have these Google Docs to vote with, and who's recording my votes is another fellow board member. That's not impartial. So if you do speak to who you need to speak to, please, can you mention that, a note taker or someone who's acting as a reader, under the law, that person needs to be impartial. It can't be, someone who, like another fellow board member. So I don't know what funding there is. I remember I did ask for if there's a possibility to have an app called Ira that gives visual description, but I was told by Kimberly James that there's no money. She's the DFS person for the community board. So, sorry, for the borough president's office. So yeah, it's really upsetting. And I think this will, it puts a barrier for people with disabilities wanting to be a board member. That they might feel like, well, how can they if they don't have equal access or, the tools to participate equally. So I really do hope more could be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing that. It is at the intersection of voting and technology, so something we can definitely look into between our committees.
Okay, and then I think we have, I'm gonna do one last one, Neil, online, and then I think we'll keep this moving if that's all right with everyone. So Neil, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Let me know if you can't hear. But as chair of the elections committee, I'm curious what your thoughts are about how the New York City Board of Elections can be reformed to count and publicize vote results more quickly. I know that was an issue. I know in the elections that we just had, there were, I think, like 150,000 provisional votes where the results were released, I think, on like December 3rd or December 2nd, so almost a month after the election. And I know that it's really important to count all of the votes. I don't think there's any wrongdoing or fraud. I think it's a question of process and state capacity. And I know that's also come up in past city elections that it takes a long time. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about how to make sure that we know the results as quickly as possible.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for raising that. I know that actually it's not where we want it to be, but there has been an improvement in the last few years. I'm happy to check in with City BOE to see what they think the solution could be here. But it's my understanding, definitely working with our state BOE, we get preliminary results most of the time, unless it's very, very close on election night. And of course, there are certain ballots that still need to be counted, but we've done a lot, which is an improvement from before, to at least for the races that aren't just at a very, very tight runoff, that we're able to get some sense of who has successfully run and won their campaigns on the night of our primaries and our general elections. But we know that doesn't happen in every single race. If there are methods for the city, funding that they need, happy to follow up there. But I think it's in all of our best interest to have these decisions as quickly as possible to enfranchise our voters instead of disenfranchise our voters who took the time to vote, but are not seeing the results of their work to come out and vote. So thank you for raising that. And I think that was the last question.
Yes, that is. Yeah.
I guess what I would just add, my quick pitch. I want to say thank you for having me and making time in the agenda. It's really great to be here in person. Again, it's the beginning of the year. We're setting our priorities. If I didn't get a chance to speak to you tonight, I really do invite you to reach out to our office. I'd love to learn more about what your subcommittees are working on and ways that our office can be useful. So I just want to re-up that ask, and we'll certainly take that and put that into our yearly planning. So the sooner you all can reach out, the better, but also hopefully by next month, we'll come back and hear any more questions and concerns.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. All right.
Just leave that. You can just leave that right there. Okay, so now we're going to move back into business session and we will move on to the chair's report. So welcome everyone to the first meeting of 2025 and our brave new world of voting. Happy New Year. I'm looking forward to the year ahead of us. And as always, I appreciate the hard work that you all put into your work on the board. While it has been a relatively light cycle for committee work, we have still been very busy as a board. I will keep it short and sweet tonight, as in addition to our resolutions and letters, we'll be voting on a few additional items. The first item is a consultant for the Land Use, Housing, and Zoning Committee to assist them with the very important task of weighing in and analyzing the Midtown South rezoning that you heard about a little bit earlier. You'll hear more on that soon. The second item is a significant round of bylaws revisions. You have all received these changes a few times, and some of you also attended an information session that Tristan, wherever he is, ran this past Monday. I would also like to once again thank our bylaws revision working group for the tireless, comprehensive work they put in compiling these revisions, engaging with our board members, and benchmarking our bylaws and these changes against our fellow boards. We will cover this in much greater detail later in the meeting and have the opportunity then to discuss and ask questions. And then finally, for those of you who didn't see and are interested, there's a quarterly update on our budget at the front table prepared by Ankur. So please take a handout if you'd like. So that concludes the chair's report. And we will now go into committee reports and resolutions, starting with the consultant for the Land Use, Housing, and Zoning Committee coming from the Executive Committee. So take it away, Nancy.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Gosho, and I'm chair of the Land Use, Housing, and Zoning Committee of Manhattan Community Board 5. I'm wearing black. And what we're asking everyone to vote on tonight and approve is assistance by a zoning expert, New York City zoning expert, who can help us with our analysis and recommendations of the MSMX plan. And if you want to learn more about it, from what you've heard already, there's a website called midtownsouthplan.nyc. If you go to that, you will see the slide deck that was presented on October 30th, 2024, where DCP held a public information presentation. We will be having DCP come to us on the 29th of January. But tonight, we are asking for approval to hire a consultant. And in order to do this, we also used a consultant when we did our response to the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity. We prepared an RFP that was reviewed and approved by the law department, and it was sent out to 4 qualified firms. The RFP focused on procuring the services of, as I said, a New York City zoning expert to analyze and prepare a comprehensive report, including a public presentation of their findings on the MSMX rezoning. This rezoning is in 4 areas, from 23rd Street to 40th Street and from 5th Avenue to 8th Avenue. Of the 4 firms solicited, we received 1 response from George M. James and Associates. And so we are asking the approval to hire this company to assist us with our resolution. Because DCP has not yet issued the zoning text, we don't have enough information to set a not to exceed fee for the consultant, but OMB has approved a $10,000 cap for this procurement. This was approved by the executive committee with 14 in favor, 2 against, and 1 abstention at our Tuesday executive committee meeting. And as I said, we're now seeking approval from the full board to engage this consultant to assist with the committee's process. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Are there any conflicts? Any questions? David?
Can you talk through your RFP process that there was only 4 you reached out to 4 folks and there was 1 response?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
How was how the
We
RFP process go?
solicited 4 firms. We sent the RFP to 4 firms, and 2 decided not to submit. We did not hear from 1, and 1 we got a response from. It's important to understand that the OMB and the law department consider this a micro RFP because it's under $20,000, which means it doesn't even require that we go through an RFP process, but we did anyway.
Any other questions? Sachi?
How did you select the 4 firms that received the RFP? What was the reason that the 2 gave for not wanting to submit, and what was the timeline for all of this?
We did not have reasons for why they did not submit. That's not generally a requirement of an RFP or an RFP process. The 4 firms were selected because they had done this work in the past, and we gathered names from a variety of sources. And what was the last question? The timeline was, we sent it out the 20th of December, and it was due the 10th of January back to the board office. It was sent out by the board, by the district manager.
Go ahead, Sachi. And just a reminder, if people could identify themselves before they speak.
Apologies. My name is Sachi. I'm 35 years old, female, dark hair, black jacket. Did the whole land use committee approve how was the whole land use committee involved in the picking of the consultants and the approval of this one?
The land use was not involved in it because there was not enough time. It was taken through the executive committee instead. This is a ULURP, and we are under a 60-day deadline, and we needed to give time for the RFP to go out for people to look at it. And we had not were not able to meet or have a special meeting of land use. So they were not involved in that part. It was the chair, the vice chair, Brad, and the district manager.
I'm going to give it to someone else. Okay, go ahead, Sachi.
Are comments due to the department?
The 21st of March.
Zona?
Hi, Zona Zoo, female, black hair, teal sweater. Thanks for your presentation, Nancy. I was like curious if you could share any additional information about the consultant, like past projects they worked on and what like the typical deliverable they might produce would look like for us.
Well, we have an RFP, but it's not something you do to share a response with a wide group of people because firms consider that proprietary information. So we would have to get his permission to release that to the general public.
But for George Janes, this is a consultant that a number of community boards have worked on. In fact, we worked with George Janes doing our City of Yes for Housing Opportunity. He did the analysis for us on that. And I believe 3 of the references were fellow community boards. Thank you. Any other questions? Any comments? Todd, go ahead. Take a mic, Todd.
Everybody hear me? Everybody hear me?
Not yet. Hold on. Okay, I'm gonna give you this one.
Okay. My name is Todd Shapiro. I'm wearing a blue short and blue chinos, age 65. So when this came up in exec, my question, which was answered the same way you heard now, was, is there any evidence or is there a feeling from the committee and the people making the decision to bring this firm on board, whether or not this is a non-political, non-biased professional firm? And that to me is the big issue, especially since in the past, we've had issues when we're bringing in outside people that there's bias, and we had some second guessing after the fact. I think that given what we've heard tonight, we've only had 1 response out of 4, and they seem to be professional based on all evidence. And I feel we'd be well advised, given the timeframes, to support the committee. This is the best we can do. And there's always room for improvement going forward. But this is, you fight the battle with the army that you have.
Thank you, Todd. Ankur, go ahead. I can, but I don't know if people online can.
Hello. Okay, thanks.
We lost you. Doesn't.
Okay. Is this working?
There you go. Yeah.
Todd's comment about the importance of having biased. I'm against extending a contract because
I think
my review, I could not come to the conclusion of a non-biased consultant. So George Janes has advised many community boards and civic organizations on rezoning. And over the past, I've been researching this. In my view, George Janes is an ideological firm. And instead of I have found that the firm consistently argues against reforms that would permit more housing in our city. For instance, in April 2023, The firm presented in front of Manhattan CB4, coming out against a proposal that has since passed to repeal the state's FAR cap, which limited New York City's ability to zone residential districts for higher housing densities. This is important because the mid housing at densities higher than the old cap permitted, and we want to ensure that our board receives neutral advice that is consistent with the policy decisions made by our elected officials housing in New York City to address. He had offered official testimony against lifting the cap as part of the then current budget process. He also described that programs that permit density bonuses for residential construction without requiring developers set aside units for housing at subsidized prices are, quote, terrible because they are, quote, a giveaway to developers. I know many people would agree with this viewpoint, but my concern is that it's not objective. Many reasonable people think we need to encourage every new unit of housing we can get. In the same presentation, he advocated against creating new housing on the Upper East and Upper West Sides in favor of more housing in outer borough neighborhoods. He made a presentation to the Friends of the Upper East Side where he argued for flat subsidized housing requirements for new development. He said 10% for all new development. And he echoed that argument in front of Manhattan CB4. I think many people would agree with him, but I think it's inappropriate that he editorialized in favor of controversial policies without discussing the trade-offs. For instance, he did not discuss how mandating a minimized number of subsidized units might prevent the construction of any new housing at all. For example, in San Francisco, for years there was a strict affordable housing mandate for all new housing construction. Did that mean that San Francisco built thousands of new units of affordable homes all over the city? No. In fact, it's the opposite. It meant that San Francisco built virtually no housing, and the state finally intervened to limit the mandate in 2023. I am all for a spirited debate on the merits of the Midtown South rezoning. There are real trade-offs here between maximizing the total number of housing units and maximizing the total number of units that are offered at subsidized prices. And there's trade-offs between how deep of subsidies we can create and the number of units in which we can subsidize. But if we're going to pay for advice, I think it's important to spend, it's not that we should not spend money on a consultant who's testified against the kind of high density housing that the city wants to bring to Midtown. And please note, none of this is directed at our land use committee, which has worked really hard to solicit bids from a number of consultants. Unfortunately, we only received one bid, and it is from a firm that, in my opinion, has failed to provide non-biased advice to community boards.
Thank you, Ankur. I'm going to go to Zool, and then David, and then Charles. Then Yara.
Zul Zolkowitz in a blue rep tie. I largely agree with Ankur's concerns. We were informed during our last land use committee meeting that there would be a search and that RFP, a request for bid would be put out to various consultants. Unfortunately, we only received a response from one. And I don't know exactly how any one of us would determine that this person is apolitical, ideological, nonpartisan. I don't know if there is such a thing, but that is a fair concern. When we are in discussion as a committee, whether it's land use or any other, or the full board, we really need to come to these meetings having done our due diligence, as Ankur always does and did again tonight. But then we will have a vigorous debate and see where the committee as a whole stands in its vote and bring that to the board, and then we will vote on the process. So I think it's a fair process. It'd be very useful to have a consultant around this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Zool. Okay, I think I said David next, and then Charles, and then you're on.
Yeah, I guess I'd echo what Zool said. I'm sensitive to the concerns that Ankur raised, but we used this consultant before. And on City of Yes, you know, there were a couple of items in his report that we took exception to. We discussed them with him and we addressed them in the committee. So I think we're an educated consumer of this material. I also think that he ultimately was a force multiplier for the committee. We would not have been able to get our work done on City of Yes if we hadn't retained him and received his report and discussed it, because it really saved us a lot of time in identifying the different components of it. And I think he'll do the same thing here. I think we'll be just as educated on this one as you know, the committee members have their own views, and I don't find anybody too shy about sharing their views in the meetings. So I expect we'll have a spirited discussion on whatever issues he raises in his findings.
Thank you, David. I think Charles was next.
You go, Charles.
Yeah, it's just a personal privilege question, Chair. I felt like what Anchor was saying was important, but sadly I wear Medicaid hearing aids and I did not pick up the majority of what he was saying. It was a little bit too fast and sometimes his mic was kind of out. I would appreciate it if he could please repeat what he said, because I feel that it sounded like it was important, and also a description. Thanks. And a description, I think he forgot.
Would you be willing to summarize what you said?
Short summary. How about
We'll take that, yeah.
Okay.
Wait,
Sorry.
yeah.
A short summary is I plan to vote against extending the consulting contract to George Janes because in the research that I did not find that he was non-biased. I had a single presentation where he had advocated for any more housing, and instead I found he consistently advocated against housing. In particular, he advocated against the type of high-density housing that the city hopes to bring in central Midtown with the Midtown South rezoning. So I am concerned that he has already made up his mind about this kind of housing. In fact, he said that he has testified against the housing at the density levels that the city is proposing. So I think he will not be a neutral consultant to present information about the rezoning.
Thank you, Ankur.
I am wearing a blue suit.
Okay, next is Yaron. I'm just gonna give you this one.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Yaron. I just want to quickly, I'll agree with David Sigmund. You know, I'm hearing sort of two areas of objection, which I'm totally sympathetic to. One around process. I think we did the best we could. I applaud the land use committee for doing the work within the constraints that they had. And the other is about this particular consultant. And you know, we're not hiring someone to decide this for us. We're hiring someone to provide an input. And if we don't like the input, then it doesn't have to be a part of our vote. So I agree with what David said, and I will be voting for this.
Okay, and then next we'll move on to Catherine.
I'm Catherine Ellington. I'm wearing all black. I am black. I just wanted to bring to the attention of the committee that there was a very short timeline to respond to this process. And if I'm not mistaken, the zoning text is not yet released. And we wanted to be in the position, we want to be in the position from now. So I encourage you all to take a deep dive on the MSMX website. But this consultant is supposed to provide expert a report to the committee for the board consideration, that this is expertise that we're seeking, not personal opinion. We all have our personal opinion, and this is an important topic for the board, coming before the board. So I just urge everyone to really take a good hard look about the 42 blocks and to attend the public presentation and to speak out if you feel that there's bias in the presentation or the report, to speak to that when it comes. But I will be moving forward, voting yes for this consultant. We have used him in the past. He has been used by other community boards, and we are open to make our decisions.
Thank you, Catherine. Charles, do you have another comment? Someone have a microphone for him, any chance? Okay.
Charles Nye again. I was wondering if the committee chair could please let me know, this consultant have they consulted anything on affordable housing? And in your opinion, committee chair, do you feel like even though as humans we try not to be biased, I think now and again everyone has bias that they can't like not have. So I don't know, in your years of working on the board, if you found this consultant to be very biased. I think you're an architect too, so maybe in your view as an architect too, have you found this person to be problematically biased in his work, or do you feel like it's not strong biasisms that this individual has? Thank you.
As a reminder, we are in comments, but I will allow that one if you would, Nancy.
I think it's important to keep in mind that the Department of City Planning, what they present to us is going to be very biased from their point of view. So having someone who comes in with a different point of view is very helpful because we're going to land somewhere in the middle. What we're looking for is this expert to write a layman's version of the zoning text. I'd like to ask the question, how many people here have read zoning text fully and understand it? Please raise your hand. One person, 1 out of 50. Okay, so that's great. I'm glad you do that. But the rest of us, including me, we need help. So that's the point of this consultant. And if there are particular issues that anyone on this board has regarding how bias might turn up, please send me an email and let me know, and we will make sure that that doesn't happen. But what we're trying to do is collect a different point of view. We don't want to have a parrot who's an expert consultant come in and tell us exactly what the Department of City Planning is proposing. What we're looking for is what are the unintended consequences of this new rezoning for a very large area of our district.
Thank you, Nancy. Are there any other comments? Okay, I see Sachi and then Janice.
Thanks, Sachi again, a 35-year-old woman with dark hair again. I also be voting no on this one. I think that given we've known that Midtown South was coming down the pipe since 2023, I was going to neighbor feedback sessions with the department back then. I know that this is I recognize the effort that's been put in by the committee, and I think that that's really important. And I do think that we had a lot of lead time that we could have used better. I also personally wasn't impressed by George Jane's presentation for City of Yes. There were multiple times that the Department of City Planning corrected inaccuracies in his description of the plan to us. And so I'll personally be voting no on this one.
Thank you, Sachi. Janice?
Thanks. Janice Young, dark hair, black jacket. I will be voting yes. I agree with what David, Yaron, and Catherine had to say. I think about the process, Nancy did a good job explaining at the exec committee meeting exactly what the timeline was and how the process played out. And I would really encourage everyone to really, instead of focusing on, of course, all of us would have liked more time. The fact is that we didn't have that much time, and we often don't have that much time. So I would encourage everyone to be forward thinking about that and thinking, if this is an issue with people, how we can fix that going forward. And then in regard to the selection process, the idea of finding someone who is unbiased, I think is somewhat laughable. I think there's always going to be bias, whether it's to whatever extent. And I think it's more important that, we do have people who are willing to do the research and check to see how people do speak on things, because that is information and that is useful to have. And, as multiple people have already said, I'd like to think we're all smart people. We're on this board, and, it's up to us to take that information and then use that to make our decisions going forward and to ask the right questions when the time comes. So Again, I will be voting yes, and I encourage others to do the same.
Thank you, Janice. I think, David, you had your hand raised. Do you want to? And then Nancy.
I'm going to be voting no on this. I thought he was very biased during the City of Yes, and the conversation when we talked to DCP about things, they said that he was wildly misleading folks on things. So I don't think that he's the right consultant for us. I think that there's a lot of folks out there in the city that can provide summaries of the zoning changes, and I think that expanding it outside of the 4, I probably in the next couple of days could figure out somebody to do that in a nonpartisan way. But I just think that he's so unbelievably biased that I'll be voting against this.
We were not able to procure a consultant until we had approval from OMB for the fee. It's not in our budget, so we had to wait until OMB approved a fee before we could go out and procure. So we did not drag our feet. We did not wait. We moved as quickly as we could as soon as we knew we had the money. Okay?
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, I see multiple people have their hands raised for a second time. I would like to keep this moving. So if unless there's something new to add to the conversation, I think let's keep this moving. Okay, go ahead, David. Is there a microphone down there that works, or?
It's just turn on.
Hello, can I suggest that we vote to approve? Can I suggest that we vote to approve hiring a consultant, and then we actually do maybe a 10-day RFP process with more than 4 folks outside of this? And I don't know when land use meets next, but maybe they can vote on the folks that are going to do this.
So I will handle that, even though, again, we are in comments, not questions, but I'll take the question, which is the advice from the law department was that we are not able to engage a consultant unless there is a vote of the full board, which is why we're having the conversation tonight. So if we do not approve a consultant tonight for whatever reason, the next opportunity we'll have will be at our full board meeting, which would be, I don't know the date off the top of my head, but it's after obviously after the next land use
But
meeting.
let's approve a consultant.
We can't, I do not believe we can just blanket approve any consultant. It has to be a specific consultant that we are approving.
Okay.
Okay, Zool. Yeah, just go ahead and take this one.
So there are members who have a different point of view on various items from mine. I don't think a single one of you is biased. You have a different point of view.
Okay. All right. So I guess now, well, we don't vote. We keep moving into the next item. So now we will move on to landmarks. And reminder everyone, your ballots are open, so you can fill that in now, or you can wait until the end of the meeting, but do not obviously hit submit until the end of the meeting.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Hirschberg. I'm the chair of the Landmarks Committee of CB5. I'm wearing a maroon shirt that was probably purchased at Lord & Taylor. So I'm actually going to go in a different order than what the packet. The first resolution that we have here is from 893 Broadway. That's an applicant, a new retail tenant there, Sattva, proposed installing a flagpole with a flag depicting the logo of the store there. And the 893 Broadway is located in the Ladies Mile Historic District. The flagpole that they are proposing to install is 4 by 8 feet and would extend 10 feet. And apparently, according to the applicant, that is within the range of other flagpoles in the area. And there's a lot of other flagpoles in the vicinity. So it's the same size, same visibility, and similar mountings. And the important thing for us here was that the applicant is going to use the holes in the building, in the facade from the prior flagpole that was there. So none of the original facade will be damaged. And so this this application was approved unanimously, 16-0-0.
Okay. Are there any conflicts? Any questions? Any comments? Okay, and just a reminder for those of you who are putting in your vote, as Mark said, he's going in the order of the agenda, not the ballot. Apologies for the confusion. So please note that this is resolution number 2 under landmarks, not resolution number 1 when you're voting. Thank you. Okay, go ahead to the next one.
So the second one concerns the proposed 5G towers within the district. You may recall a few meetings ago, we discussed a resolution from the Parks and Public Spaces Committee that was basically a blanket prohibition on putting them in the area. This is actually a separate process from that. The process here is as a part of the National Historic Preservation Act. Pursuant to that legislation, basically the entity that's installing them has consultants that contact consulting parties. We are consulting parties, one of the consulting parties. And so they ask us to submit comments about specifically the impact on landmarks in the area. So we are only commenting on specific locations that are near a landmark. We had 2 come through this cycle, but the issue for us is that we only are given 30 days to submit comments, and we may not have enough time between investigating it, going to the committee, our committee, putting together our comments, and then coming before the full board to vote on it. So what I am asking here is for the authority of the from the full community board to have the landmarks committee investigate, prepare, and issue comments on behalf of the full board. Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
Any conflicts? Any questions? Any comments? Okay, thank you very much, Mark.
One comment.
Oh, sorry, Mernal. Sorry, grab a mic. Sorry. Maybe somewhere.
It's a very general comment on this voting. Instead of approve, deny, if we could make it yes or no. That way, if there's a letter for denial and you vote yes on it, then you're voting for the letter as opposed to approve to deny. It's a little confusing.
Just to summarize, Mernal is making a point about the online ballot that it should say yes or no versus approve, deny, because if we are approving a denial, we are issuing a denial. So note taken. Thank you. That's a good note. Thank you. And just to be clear for everyone, that is how it'll be structured. So an approve is similar to a yes previously, and a deny is similar to a no previously. That was Mernal. Okay. No other comments? Okay, let's move on to parks then. Again, another
Tiffany.
reminder, please fill out your ballots as you go if you'd like.
Thank you.
I think that Tiffany online has it.
Oh, Tiffany, I see you. Sorry, apologies.
Hey, thank you. Sorry, I didn't hear what the committee's vote was. It might kind of cut out a little bit on 5G towers. What was the committee's vote?
It was unanimous, but the number was 11. Did I make that up? 16. Oh, sorry, I'm thinking a different one. Different. Yes, 16-0-0-0. Okay, on to parks.
Hi, I am Libby Hutton. I am the interim Parks and Public Spaces Chair. I have long brown hair and I'm wearing a gray sweater wrap thing. We only had one activation this month and one item on the parks agenda. It is the first marketing activation of 4 for the year for Madison Square Park. It is a Lego Botanicals activation. It'll be a truck set up on the West Gravel. It will begin from January 30th and run through February 3rd. They will distribute different stations within this truck to collect Lego pieces, and then participants will be able to come together to make them into a daffodil. They will have people on site to regulate pedestrian flow. There will be no amplified sound. This is consistent with other annual marketing events that we allow for the park. This is a significant source of funding for the park. And the committee approved this application 11000.
Thank you, Libby. Any conflicts? Any questions? Any comments? Okay, seeing none online as well. All right, we will move to Bex.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Tristan Haas, 29 years old, wearing a dark blue sweater. So we had 2 items come before Bex this month. Could I have them read deemed read?
So deemed.
And bundled, please?
You don't need to bundle them anymore.
Sorry?
We don't need to bundle anymore.
Oh yeah, we don't. That's great. So the first item, was a request by the Manhattan Borough President to sign on to a letter in support of the New York State Legislature No Cap Act. So this request is going out to all of the Manhattan community boards. Essentially, it's focusing on supporting a constitutional amendment that to a requirement that exists in state law that sets a ratio of trial judges based on 1 justice per 50,000 people. And so this is a ratio that's enshrined in the Constitution, of which New York is one of only 2 states that has such a cap and a check on the legislature from determining the appropriate number of judges and their allocation across the state. So this act had a similar act that passed the legislature and was signed by the governor last year under New York state law. Constitutional amendments have to pass the legislature and be signed by the governor twice before they go before voters. And so most of the elected officials in the state are in support of this. Just to give you a sense of how this impacts Manhattan, right now there are 42,000 pending cases in Manhattan, but only 27 elected trial judges. So this is one component. Like, we focus at a board on like the backlog in the past from different perspectives, such as like legal aid. We've never before focused on the supply of judges, which is one factor, not the only factor, but one factor that drives that large backlog. And so we thought appropriate to sign on to the letter. And so it was unanimously supported 14-0 by the committee.
Thank you. Any conflicts? Any questions? Any comments? Okay, Todd.
Hello. I'm glad to see that the board and the committee is putting this forth. The shortage of judges and judicial capacity is a terrible problem, not only in New York City and New York State, but across the country. It's a political football, and as a community board, we should do what we can to increase the number.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Any other comments? Okay, next one.
Okay. So the second item, a resolution that was passed by the committee, pertains to a presentation by the Bellevue Hospital's Citizen Advocacy Board, requesting community board support ahead of their lobbying of the state legislature on key budgetary matters, specifically related to the Medicaid reimbursement rate. So Bellevue is not within CB5, it's in CB6, but it's right over the border, and they service many citizens of Community Board 5, especially in light of the closure of Sinai, Israel. Thank you. So Bellevue is unique in that it's a public hospital, and their constituents or the individuals that they serve are disproportionately individuals who are on Medicaid. Currently, under New York state law, the Medicaid reimbursement rate is set at 70% of cost. For other hospitals, they're able to cover those costs via private insurance and other services provided that lets them stay in the green. Bellevue operates at a net negative in operating costs. Because they are a public hospital, each year the state legislature appropriates enough money via emergency mechanisms to fill that gap. So they're not going bankrupt, but that process of not reimbursing 100% or closer to that does inhibit their ability to plan, allocate resources accordingly each year as they're servicing patients, and results in them having to continue to lobby for support of those emergency resources each year. So we spoke about this at length at the committee, focusing on Bellevue specifically, on safety net hospitals and public hospitals as a whole. And especially, we did focus on the costs involved, which can be large. And we elected to propose this resolution supporting Bellevue's efforts and to close the reimbursement gap, as well as expressing support for other safety net hospitals and increasing the Medicaid reimbursement rate. There was a discussion about the costs, like I said, and so I think the consensus of the committee was we're not appropriators, so we don't have to make all the cost benefit analyses, but we have to take a look at our district and what can help our district. And it's in the best interest of our district, we felt, to support Bellevue in these negotiations. So we're not saying that across the state it should be at 100%, because we were focusing on private hospitals and whether we would be encouraging the state to allocate more money towards those hospitals. So we're focusing very specifically on Bellevue and other safety net hospitals.
Thank you, Tristan. Any conflicts? Any questions? Ankur.
I understand that you are, so you couldn't do a full cost benefit analysis, certainly, and then time didn't permit, but trade-offs or spends more per healthcare costs, the best health outcomes in the country, and any reimbursements would come out of state revenue, although first by the federal government, depending on, but that means that you are there are potentially trade-offs for this very district because tax revenue that would otherwise be sent for other programs will now have to go for Bellevue. So what considerations did you give to why the costs are so high in New York specifically, and what trade-offs might exist within this district, even if you're thinking about benefits for this district?
Yeah, sure. So we did discuss that, and what really put us over the edge in support of this is at the end of the day, New York State is covering these costs. It's just a question of when, like at the front, when they're getting reimbursed by Medicaid, or at the end of each year when New York State is coming in and filling the operating gap, because they do operate in the red. And so that is kind of what drove us to support this position. We don't think, and they don't think, they're going to get 100%. They might not get anything. They do this every year. So we thought expressing this resolution would show our support to Bellevue and its importance to the district, especially in light of the recent change in the healthcare landscape in CB6 and around it. Sorry, CB5.
Okay, sorry, David, go ahead.
Hi, so I'm just, the folks advocating for this, is this the Greater New York Hospital Association?
The individuals who came before the committee were from their citizen advisory, community advisory board.
Got it. And so this resolution, this is just for Bellevue, or is this for all New York City hospitals, which would include the for-profit hospitals as well?
So as written, we are focusing it specifically on, so the way it's written, so New York City Health and Hospitals is like the umbrella of Bellevue. And so that dash Bellevue is focusing specifically on Bellevue. And then we also scoped in other safety net hospitals, but we did not scope in all hospitals in the city or across the state.
It looks like in 2020, sorry, in the past here, in 2021, no, maybe actually recently here, that there is a push so that for-profit hospitals will get higher Medicaid reimbursement as well. So it seems to me that the system right now is working for the nonprofits in that there's a shortfall, but the city's covering the shortfall for the nonprofits. This looks like a way in for for-profit hospitals to get more money. So that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, like it depends on how it's implemented, right? Like if you just changed the Medicaid reimbursement rate, full stop, that would apply universally.
And the state is already reimbursing the nonprofit public hospitals for this shortfall anyway.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
So
So Bellevue,
so
so
the-
they
so-
are covering the cost each year. Yes, the point's well taken.
Thank you. Zona.
Zona Zoo. Tristan, I was wondering if you'd comment a little bit on the access dynamics around the lower Medicaid reimbursement today. So for example, if a Medicaid patient gets the hospital less than a commercial patient, do you currently see Bellevue turning away Medicaid patients, and the extent to which you feel like this would help improve access?
Yeah, so Bellevue does not turn them away. So that's why they're considered safety net hospitals. So they're not denying care. And they have, high rates of Medicaid patients, I think, in part due to that. So I can't say that they're not turning people away. But they do, in terms of how it impacts their planning and services, it's easier for them to budget and plan and have a set of services each year if they know how much they're going to be getting back for each operation or each service they apply. That's certainly true.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Comments? All right. I saw Charles. We'll just work our way down the table. So we'll do Todd, Charles, David.
Okay.
Take the mic.
Todd Shapiro, same blue chinos and light blue shirt, brown hair. So again, it's important to keep the big picture here, which is that the public hospitals are under threat and under siege by the healthcare economics across the country. And they have to be supported and subsidized. And it's tough for the city and state to come up with the money. They do it, but they don't do it easily or in any way that makes logical sense. The private hospitals tend to do much better because they deal with private health insurance. And, as a community board, what I would suggest, and I think this is what Bex has got their heads around, which is that all we can do is make it crystal clear that the result of the medical economics are that our public hospitals are at risk, and we have to do what we can with our advisory influence to make sure that they survive. And just one other word, Bellevue is not just a hospital, right? Bellevue is the crown jewel of the public hospital health system. And if it goes down or can't maintain a high quality of service, then it's the canary in the coal mine, and we're going to have real problems. So that's the big picture.
Thank you, Todd. Charles.
Charles Nye here. As a community board member who lives in the district who is on Medicaid, I just wanted to put on record that, and someone who speaks to doctors and asks them about these questions about how they feel about getting Medicaid and how much they get reimbursed, the incentive isn't there. There's a lot of providers who have left our district because Medicaid won't reimburse, and patients like myself have to go out of borough and use ambulettes or medical taxis or even Uber Health, which cost the taxpayer more money when we have to go all the way to Brooklyn or Queens for medical services. And to be honest, we shouldn't have to. We should get it here in the district that we live in. And I just want to make a very important point, since we know in the news about health is a hot topic, is that I have spoken to psychiatrists about this, and they said, the fact that they don't get reimbursed does put them off, but it puts off people going into and things like that because they're not getting that incentive. And I feel like it's a pity we can't mention, since we're a community board of this district, that we need more Medicaid providers here, and we need to do something about that. I'm happy Bellevue, that we're supporting Bellevue, but we also need to support, some of the providers who are, the few providers who are in our district, and advocate for more providers, because we do have low-income people living in the district, and we do have shelters and things like that, and subsidized housing. So those people are mostly on Medicaid. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. David, you're next.
David Sigmund. I just wanted to, I'm not looking to obviously change what's being proposed. I just wanted to broaden it a little bit to make the point, first of all, that other states like the state of New Jersey do a much better job in Medicaid reimbursement, and they somehow figure out how to run the state, make pension contributions and all the other things that states do, while having a adequate Medicaid reimbursement rate. And in terms of this question of public versus private, there's also categories like Planned Parenthood, which is a nonprofit, and my family is active in Planned Parenthood, and their reimbursement is effectively a 30-cent loss on every dollar that they incur for providing services, and the vast majority of their clients are Medicaid patients. So they typically get 70 cents back for a dollar that they spend on providing services. So it's clearly a long-term problem. It can't really be avoided. Bellevue is a good test case, although, as Tristan said, they ultimately get reimbursed from the bottom line at the end of the day, whereas a place like Planned Parenthood doesn't. They just incur the loss and have to raise it privately. So it's a huge issue that is going to have to be tackled at some point.
Thank you, David. All right, I think David Shapiro is next. You good? Okay. Yoden.
Hi, I'm Yoden Thondon, and I'm on the BEX committee. So I just wanted to say that I learned something at our last meeting about our hospital system, and wanted to share with you that there are 11 safety net hospitals for New York City, and I believe only one is in Manhattan, which is Bellevue. And Bellevue is also a major magnet for behavioral health services and is the hospital for Rikers Island. And the way the resolution is written is it's quite specific to Bellevue, but also encourages greater support for all safety net hospitals. So that's why it's written the way it is. We are Manhattan Community Board 5. We've got one safety net hospital in Manhattan. We should support it. Thank you.
Thank you. You're on. Yeah, just take this one.
Yeah, I'm also on Bex, and I'm also going to support this. I appreciate that there are a lot of questions and issues around like the cost structures and the payments around in the healthcare system. I think this resolution and this topic, it's like very narrow for us. Basically, I took it to be, or I interpreted it as, we're being asked, do we want to perpetuate a system in which Bellevue has to go to Albany every year and say, this was our loss, will you make it up? And Albany has to say yes, and then they have to go through that process. Or should Bellevue just get more of the money automatically? And to me, the first system is actually a nonsensical system. So now, yes, there are issues that we have to address around cost. I totally agree with that. But to me, this is actually a pretty narrow choice, and that's why I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Yaron. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. We are going to move on to the bylaws. Much awaited. Welcome, Tristan, with a different hat.
Tristan Haas. Okay, so for those of you who attended Monday's optional info session, some of what I'll say is a repeat. I want to make sure everyone hears it. So we started off this effort like middle of last summer, basically. And we kind of laid out our principles about evaluate everything objectively, defined technocratic process to our fellow community boards and adopt their best practices, to engage all of you by pulling your reviews, socializing the areas that we were going to look at and incorporating that into our final outcome. And then ensuring that whatever we propose are practical, actionable, and don't violate any state or city laws. And so since we kicked off this work stream, so the working group identified a comprehensive list of areas to focus on. I think we had something around 80, many of which were flagged by all of you in our first survey. Then we looked at our fellow Manhattan Community Boards bylaws in detail and documented how each of them addressed or didn't each of those considerations. We also surveyed all of you about your preferences on all of those considerations. Then we had that background diligence. We had numerous long working sessions walking through each one of those considerations and coming to a decision on if we wanted to make a change pertaining to them in our bylaws, or if we thought our existing approach or not acknowledgement of it within our bylaws made sense. We developed our positions for each of those, and we incorporated those positions into a red line. And then we sent that red line to the New York City Legal Department for their review. And then we also had the review session on Monday. So you'll see before you in the materials and the materials that we sent out previously that beyond the red line, we've summarized the changes and lumped them into numerous buckets of like-minded or related changes. And so we don't want to be going through the bylaws line by line, getting approvals, but neither did we want to have, one yay or nay vote on the package as a whole. And so we ended up with 7 buckets. And so via this electronic voting process, it's going to be all of your prerogative to, vote your conscience and look at each bucket and think, okay, do the positives of this outweigh the negatives? And vote for each one. If there's anything that gets voted down, that's totally okay. And I think what we'll do is listen to the qualitative feedback that we hear in this meeting. And if we hear that, in item D, positive feedback about everything except for reporting a budget each year to the full board, then we can propose a red line addressing everything but that for the committee's review. And I'll say, because of the changes that were approved last meeting, we'll have a shorter timeline to make any changes. And then if in the future, any of you want to propose any changes to the bylaws, it's your prerogative to draft proposed amendment and circulate it to the full board in accordance with that procedure. And then you'll be up here talking about those proposed changes. And so I want to thank all the members of the bylaws working group for their efforts in this. So that's Yaron, Todd, Janice, David, and Mike. A lot of time spent on this over the holidays, and David worked on his vacation a couple of days too. So I really appreciate all your due diligence, and we had a lot of robust engagement weighing all these issues. So to jump right in, so again, 7 buckets. If you're following along with the deck, I'm turning to slide 5. So in the materials, we summarized the revisions. We detailed the key considerations of how our fellow committee boards have tackled each of these, and then have some high-level commentary on what drove the changes. So the first item, or the first bucket, pertains to our board election processes and responsibilities. So I'll rattle off the changes. The first is shifting the election timeline from where it is today to November, and then moving up the dates of socialization and vetting of candidates up accordingly. In terms of why we did that, so we felt that right now it's not ideal in that new members come in knowing no one, not knowing what a community board is, and then we ask them to elect their leadership. In the past, we've even told them they shouldn't be voting, and so a decent percentage of the electorate is not engaged in selecting its leaders. We did think that made sense. Most of the community boards, 7 of them in Manhattan, have elections in Q4, so we debated really the merits of October through December. And we settled on November because if we picked December, chances that we could have attendance issues in the holidays, even if we're conducting board business. And then if we did it in September, we basically have to be in an election mindset. If we did it in October, we would basically be in an election mindset most of the year because we'd have to select our elections and or nominating committee in the preceding June. And so we thought having it in November would let us select those members in September and have like a rational period for that. And we'd have everyone with a substantial knowledge of how the board operates and informed enough to cast their votes. We also proposed replacing a nominating committee that exists today, where this committee interviews members, collects information, and proposes a specific slate with one individual for each spot. Proposed replacing it with an elections committee that's more administrative in nature. So they're gathering up the list of individuals who want to run for each position, gathering up their questionnaires and or their campaign platforms in writing, and then sharing that with the full board and then running the elections themselves. So we felt that this would have the process be as open as possible to all members who want to throw their hat in the ring and avoid any institutional biases that may exist or uncomfort that some people may have throwing their hat in the ring if the nominating committee is composed of people who they feel are more likely to select existing people in the role or certain members of the board. So we felt that would be the most open process. Correspondingly, we proposed that the nominating committee or the election committee be appointed in September. And then the rest of the process would basically be consistent, where they'd source and report the slate of all announced candidates to the full board in October. And then individuals can still put forth their name for candidacy in that meeting, and then we have elections in November. Leading into that election, we defined or enshrined a formal socialization process for how individuals can carry out and or share their platforms. I think what we saw this past year was a lot of people, especially new members, getting a barrage of emails from candidates, wanting to have a lot of coffee chats, which is still permitted today. It's campaigning, but we wanted to have central opportunities for everyone to get the same message and a consistent message from the candidates. And so that's going to include both circulating documentation like their platforms or survey responses, and then having speeches at the elections meeting. And that's consistent with how, most of the board, 6 other boards have speeches, 6 boards with some overlap have some type of documentation circulation processes. In terms of how it's carried out, we're proposing that it be carried out via written ballot, electronic when feasible, and requiring a majority vote to win. And so majority being 50% plus 1. So if there are numerous candidates for a given role and no one hits 50% plus 1 at the first ballot, the bottom performing candidate would be removed, and we'd keep voting until someone hit 50%. We also scoped in some provisions on how to handle this transition period that we're going to be in very shortly if this passes. So right now we are in a term that ends in May. The current leadership of the board were elected last year on that understanding. And so we didn't want to just unilaterally extend that current term through next November, because that's not what everyone here had elected them to do. We did weigh the pros and cons of having that extension versus having an election in May for like a year and a half. But we decided to come out with our proposal, which would have one election this June for a very short term, and then have another election this upcoming November in line with these new processes that we're proposing. So, we'd have to, unfortunately, still have to have new members come in and vote. And we'd have to go through all this process, which is not unmaterial. But we thought this was the best outcome across the board there. Turning to slide 7. The second bucket pertains to conflict of interest requirements and processes. So the first change was adding in references or simplifying our conflict of interest policies. So there is some language today that kind of talks about how everyone's here serving on behalf of themselves, and then some similar language to what's in the conflict of interest laws. And so from looking at our peer boards, and we spent a lot of time talking about this specifically, given everything from this year, the conflict of interest rules that apply to us are those that are documented in state law. We, per our bylaws, and per the guidance from legal department and other jurisdictions, we can't set our own conflict of interest laws, and we can't like enforce and disposition and deem other people in conflict with those laws. That's not our prerogative. We're bound by the city law. And so we thought it would be most appropriate to point to those statutes to govern conflict of interest, and also add guidance in our bylaws pointing to the conflict of interest laws for reference, and the conflict of interest board for advisory opinions if people needed guidance. We today have an ethics committee. Well, according to the bylaws, we have an ethics committee. We don't have any individuals on this ethics committee, but we're required to have one. We spent a lot of time talking about the pros and cons of this, especially in light of no other community board having an ethics committee, and pretty clear guidance we got from the legal department about how we should not have an ethics committee that for period, but also one that makes decisions and dispositions, both for board liability and the individuals on it. But at the same time, we did not come to a consensus on removing the ethics committee to reflect existing practice, especially in light of the stuff this year. So what we ended up on is proposing to keep the ethics committee, simplify their mission, and have them be a body of individuals appointed by the board, as they are today, who are there to advise board members if they have questions on conflict of interest, documented in the bylaws or the city law, and made clear that they're there for consultation purposes, not to make determinations, and also incorporating a confidentiality requirement. So we thought that was like a middle ground. We also added a requirement that we came across in CB4's bylaws that basically says that individuals who sign up at full board for the public session and speak are presumed to be interested parties and are not permitted to participate in the questioning of other speakers for that item or vote. So I know that seems controversial, but the driver of the... Yes, board members speaking at public session, which, just to clarify, is the session at the beginning of this meeting when members of the public speak for 2 minutes before the elected come in. The driver of that change from CB4 and ourselves is we don't want members to come in and just share and discuss their positions in advance of the business session. So not express them before we have a chance, we give the public an opportunity to weigh in, and we have the chance to ask questions as a body and discuss those issues. We don't want to be predisposed. Obviously, we all have our views, but I think we shall be open to change our views based on what each of us say at the business session or what we hear from presenters. And so we thought this was a best practice and a unique practice that we can incorporate. Want to make crystal clear, this does not prevent board members from coming and speaking at public session on items that are not on the agenda. So you're all members of the public and you have the prerogative to speak. This is specifically pertaining to signing up to speak about a specific agenda item being covered. Okay, so now I'll turn to slide 8. So this pertains to amending board meeting processes and requirements. So there are a few kind of administrative items here. The first is defining under what circumstances the exec committee is permitted to act on behalf of the full board. 9 of the other boards outline such circumstances. We don't, so we thought this was just a best practice to incorporate a definition that governs that, so there's no questions. I know that's come up a few times this year that we've had to navigate it without any defined definition, so it's good to have that on paper. We also defined full board executive session processes and requirements, pointing to the state open meetings law. 8 other boards outline such processes, also predominantly pointing to the open meetings law or reproducing the content of the open meetings law in their own bylaws. We make explicit what should or is required to be documented in the minutes, so action items, votes, and outcomes. We also made clear in the section addressing non-committee member participation in the deliberations of committees, we added a parenthetical just making it abundantly clear that business session is included in that because over the years there's been different approaches communicated from leadership. We modified the board meeting agenda to add a district manager report. So 8 other boards include such a district manager report, so we're fairly unique. I think it's easy to forget because we love these conversations, but many members of our district, their only engagement with the board is via that board office and the district manager. So we want to make sure there's a clear section in the agenda for the district manager to communicate key issues to those who are in attendance. We modified our public session language to cap it at 1 hour and remove the half-hour minimum. That's just for the purposes of having a strict top limit of how long we spend in the public session. That's consistent with the practice of many other bodies. I remember going to the MTA where they had one session for public session of 1 hour. We don't really breach that because again, that's just the section of the very beginning of the meeting when the public members come in. It's not the electeds or their representatives. We talked about capping that, but we did not. So yeah, that's for the public session. We spent a lot of time talking about how and if to moderate and safeguard debate in the business session. I think this year there's been an increase of what feels like a race to make the motion to kind of shape the eventual outcome of these dialogues, which, you know, it's our prerogative under Robert's rules, but it does inhibit sometimes the full board from giving due diligence to the key points of a resolution if we're arguing about parliamentary procedure and, you know, who raised their hand first. And so where specifically we enshrine in here is precluding ending debate on a board action. So like on the resolution level, not a dialogue on a specific parliamentary procedure before each member that's interested has spoken once. So we're not saying everyone has to speak once. We're not saying you can speak only once. But if someone right now decided they wanted to move to a vote, we would say something like, is there anyone who has not spoken that wants to speak? If someone qualified as that wanted to speak, that would be their opportunity. But we just want to make sure that, you know, there's enough attention given to the items on the agenda in their substance. And then we also added some requirements on agenda sharing to the full board. So right now, you know, we've got that final agenda that goes out with the full board package ahead of our full board meeting. Usually the day of or the day before. But we did get feedback from members of the board that they'd like to see agenda items well ahead of time. And there are some operational considerations that prevent us from having like a full final agenda like the week before, because where we have committee action still taking place. Often there's engagement going on with presenters or with restaurateurs with regards to SLAP that precludes having a final agenda a week before. But we did think it would make sense to share a draft agenda as it stood, 3+ meetings ahead of the full board meeting, and then document a requirement to share the final agenda at least one day before the full board meeting. Turning to slide 9 on the updating of board officer responsibilities. So we added the prerogative of a chair to appoint a parliamentarian and a tech officer. So 4 of the boards have chair appointed parliamentarians. Their responsibility is only to advise the chair. So the chair still has the prerogative of making those decisions. And it's always the full board's prerogative to overrule the chair if they disagree on the Roberts rules. But we thought it would be good to have one person deputized if the chair wanted to help advise them on parliamentary procedure. We also added the prerogative of chair to appoint a tech officer. So this actually did not exist in any of the other bylaws, but we thought given the attention this year on hybrid meetings and ensuring that the mics are working and Zoom, we wanted to give the chair the opportunity to deputize someone as well to formalize that responsibility. We'll make clear that both of those roles are not formal board officers, so they do not serve on exec. The tech officer role is, we probably could have phrased it a little bit differently in hindsight, but they're members appointed to assist the chair in their responsibilities and the board office with regards to the tech officer. We amended the chair responsibilities to expand the pool of individuals who they should keep abreast of material operational matters. Right now, it limits it to just the vice chairs. We expanded that to all officers. And then we also required that an exec committee affirmative vote be passed if, in order for the borough president to recommend, in order for the chair to recommend to the borough president that a board member be removed. Right now, there's not that formal requirement. We moved responsibility from tracking attendance from the vice chair to the secretary. Right now, there's a bit of responsibilities that are in each bucket, and so we thought concentrating those responsibilities in one person was good governance. And then we also added a formal responsibility for the vice chair to manage new member onboarding, which was not previously formally addressed in our bylaws. We think it's important, and we think the responsibilities for that be clear. So we tapped that to the vice chairs. We modified the exec committee ex officio members. Right now, the way it reads is all former chairs. So we scoped that specifically to only the former chair at a given point in time. And we also removed their voting privileges. So now going forward, whoever was the previous chair would be able to attend and share their experience, but being unelected by the board, we didn't think it appropriate that they would be voting on items. We amended the officer succession processes so that wherever applicable, all secondary roles, so think second vice chair, would automatically inherit the primary roles if vacancies arose. So we had a few situations this year where we had the first role open up, and then the second vice chair put their name in the hat. They were elected, and then we had to just jump to having an election for the second vice chair, each of which requires 1 month or 1 meeting notice in order to have an election, which resulted in a lot of gaps on our exec board. And so we thought this would ensure that there's a backup for a reason, so they would just get promoted if vacancies opened up, and then we would just fill those secondary roles in accordance with our BAU processes. We modified our board ex officio membership to specifically limit it to just the city council members who represent part of our district, which is in line with the city charter requirements. Previously, we also had like other elected officials scoped in there, which is not required, and they just don't need to be ex officio members. We added detail for managing disruptive members of the public, basically charging the meeting chair with managing such disruption. We made sure to include a check that you could not preemptively remove someone from a meeting on the expectation that they would become disruptive, just that there is a mechanism and someone charged with maintaining responsibility for managing such members. And just to clarify, there was a question of this on Monday, I would not view disruption to be someone using their time in the public session, even if they've strongly held views, but using their 2 minutes to speak and share those views. But I think it would be, if there was someone here actively disrupting and preventing the full board from operating. And then finally, we added a requirement that the annual budget be presented to the full board by the treasurer each year, which is in line with 7 other boards. All right, slide 10, E. I'll pick up the pace. So we we established term limits and some additional officer checks. So we limited both the chair and board exec roles to 3 consecutive 1-year terms. A number of other boards have term limits of varying ranges from 2 years to 6 years. So we kind of fall in the middle of that. We added a process for removing or impeaching board officers, but limited it to solely failure to perform assigned duties under the bylaws, not policy or position issues. And so there are 3 other boards that have some mechanism for removing officers. We also added a requirement that no board members may chair more than 1 committee. We thought this was just a good check to avoid concentration of power and, a healthy level of leadership turnover. We did also discuss putting in place like checks on board officers from also serving as committee chairs. We spoke about that pretty extensively, and we did elect not to tie the chair's hand in case there could be situations that arose in the future. Such as if we had a sudden departure of a committee chair, and if someone on the board exec had previously served in that role, we wanted to have the opportunity for the chair to appoint someone in there who could shepherd the committee through. Slide 11. So we removed mention with pertains to board member responsibilities and requirements. We removed mention of reprimanding from the board member removal and reprimanding processes. This doesn't really happen. Only a few other boards have that mechanism. And then we clarified the causes, or we got rid of the specificity for removing causes. So we added some e.g., just making it for example, and then added failure to meet attendance requirements as one of those examples. We clarified our attendance policies to basically get rid of this concept of excused or unexcused absences, which adds quite a lot of administrative overhead to a process that we have a pretty generous policy in place for, and we have a pretty robust engagement process if people start trending below those attendance requirements. And so we thought that having the generous allowances for missing meetings, combined with the fact that the processes in place to remove members, which require ample socialization and the opportunity to go to exec and talk about why they're missing meetings, provided ample safety and defense of the members' rights. We amended the leave of absent review processes to shift responsibility for approving those absences from exec to the chair, just for privacy considerations. Often those things are pretty personal, and we don't really think that the full exec body should be discussing those, especially given the public open meeting laws requirements. We also modified this section on identifying yourself as a member of the community board to either the press or the government. Right now, there's a restriction saying that you can't do it, which probably is not legal. And so we got rid of that language and instead replaced it with the requirement to say that, if you're speaking in those situations, like you should say that you're not speaking on behalf of the board with regards to the press, and that your positions are your own, unless you're charged to represent the board by the chair. And then we amended the attendance policy requirements to missing, greater than 2 consecutive meetings, and/or greater than 5 meetings for a given body. So at either one specific committee, full board, or your other specific committee that you serve on, 5 in a 12-month period. And then finally, slide 12, we incorporated some general cleanups here and streamlining. So first, we took our separate internal operations code of business expectation and responsibilities and added it directly into the bylaws. Some of it is, at the back, kind of an appendix, but wherever it was appropriate, we slotted the pertinent content into the body of the bylaws. Because the burden for amending those is now lowered, we thought we can now focus on just maintaining the bylaws as a whole and also ensure that there's one golden source for members to go to if they want to learn about the rules and processes that govern the community board. I think I know a lot of people have not read the internal operations code of business expectations and responsibilities, so I think it'll be much easier for new member onboarding to have that one document that contains everything. We incorporated they pronouns throughout, so it says he, she, they, just modernization. We added a section detailing the responsibilities of the district manager and board office at a high level. So our community board had no language on that, which differs from all of our peers. So we added some detail on it. We didn't get too prescriptive, just added at a high level what they're charged with, very high level. We changed the, with regards to the member removal processes, it currently says you have to be notified by hand or overnight courier. So we modified that to in writing. We added some language to govern and to set forth our principle for handling accessibility, essentially requiring best efforts to ensure the accessibility of materials and the physical accessibility for meetings. And so there are 2 boards that have language on ensuring the physical accessibility of meetings. And then we're the only one that address virtual and tech accessibility in their bylaws. And then finally, general streamlining throughout. So there's like language that's duplicated, that's identical in multiple areas. So making sure that, there's no redundancies throughout and that it's organized appropriately. And that's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Tristan. Okay. So are there any questions? Yoden, we need a microphone. No, you need one for online.
Thank you. This is really, I mean, you worked so hard on this, so everyone, thank you very much. Really makes a lot of sense to me. I just had one quick question for section D. Can you just remind us of what the secondary roles are in terms of automatic succession?
Sure. So there's the second vice chair. So we have 2 vice chairs, a first vice chair and a second vice chair. So in this case, if the first vice chair was vacated, if Todd left the board, I would move to first vice chair, and then there would be a vacancy on second vice chair. There's also a treasurer. Oh, sorry. There's a first secretary and a second secretary.
Assistant secretary.
Assistant secretary. So if you're on left, Catherine would automatically assume the first secretary role, and then there would be an election for the assistant secretary.
Questions? Charles.
Hi, Charles Knight here. Hello. So regarding the accessibility, is there a way to put in the bylaws as a reminder that, you know, an acknowledgement that this community board, this entity is a Title II entity and does have an obligation to provide effective communications. So it's not like sort of in the future we'll try, it's actually mandatory. And I think it's important for that. Regarding the public session, you know, as board members, we're also members of the community, and in the public session, you can talk about anything you would like to. Don't you think it's especially having freedom of speech, that a member of the public can have 2 minutes to speak on a topic, but then a board member who's also a member of the public, if they do speak on something on the agenda, they're then labeled with compelled speech, a compelled government speech from this community board as a special interest. You know, I'm concerned about that, and you know, I would like to hear your answer on that. Sorry, it's a long day, and I'm really concerned. Could you please tell me something more about the conflict? Because you're basically, is it correct that basically you're relying on individual members to be honest on their conflicts of interest and police themselves, basically? Thank you.
Sure. So all federal, state, and city laws are binding on this community board, and our bylaws can't contradict any of those, both with regards to accessibility and with regards to, you know, freedom of speech. We did, like I mentioned, send the bylaw revisions to the legal department. They have unfortunately not gotten back to us yet. If they do come back to us and say that there are certain things in the bylaws which are illegal, those sections would be rendered moot, and we would seek to amend the bylaws so that we can only that we have requirements that reflect what is enforceable. So if they do come and say, you know, those sections on public session, we recommend against, I think we're all agreed that we would modify those. But I think that because another community board has those, we're not straying into, you know, new ground. This is a practice that exists elsewhere, another body that thoughtfully put that into place. And I think we thought that the rationale for that change and that requirement made sense. You know, the public session is intended for members of the public to come in and speak on the issues on the agenda to inform our ultimate decisions. If members of the board are using that to speak about their position on items of the agenda, and essentially they're double dipping, because the business session is intended for all of the board members to speak. The public session is meant to be offered to members of the public to do the same. So again, if we find it's illegal, you know, I'll be the one to submit the amendment. But I think we think it's just a best practice to reserve that session for the public. And I'm sorry, remind me, what was your last question? Oh, conflict. Yes. So even today, under existing bylaws, you know, you cannot instill doubt on other members' motivations. You can't accuse someone else on this board of being behooven to other interests. So that's not a new requirement. This is just essentially documenting the actual requirements that apply to all board members under state and city law to abide by the conflict of interest legislation.
Thank you. I can't see whose hand. John.
Yes. Section F, I have a couple of questions, or one question, but it's sort of parts, separate parts of it. I'd like to get a clarification on what's the definition of a regular meeting. Also, whether a regular meeting includes full board meetings and committee meetings. And when we are being asked to vote on F, the language seems to change from regular meeting to meetings per body. So I'd just like to get a clarification. So for instance, if you had committee meeting 1 on Monday, committee meeting 2 on Tuesday, and the full board meeting on Wednesday of the same week, are all of those regular meetings, and therefore you're immediately in breach of the bylaws? And then one last element of this is that you say that, at least the bylaws say that at any regular meeting, a majority vote can remove someone. So again, that if the regular meeting includes committee meetings, that implies that or states that a committee could remove a member. So if you could just explain to me how those link to each other, please.
Sure. So with regards to the attendance question, you can basically view it as 3 separate attendance requirements applicable to you for each entity on which you serve. So full board, if you miss 3 consecutive meetings, so 3 months in a row, you'd fall afoul of the bylaws. Ditto for each of those committee meetings. Missing 1 month of meetings, both your committees and the full board, would not fall afoul of the attendance requirements.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Do you believe that the text states that? I understand what the intention is. I'm asking, does the language reflect that? And then secondly, you do have a section that says the board may by majority vote at a regular meeting remove party. Is a regular meeting a committee meeting? And does that mean that a committee could remove someone? I understand what your intention is. I just think the language does not, and this is a great job you've done, so I'm not criticizing what you've done. I just want to just point out that the language, it doesn't seem to reflect what your intention is.
So I'm trying to look at the regular.
And if you look at the vote we're being asked to make, you introduce a whole new concept for the first time. You refer to per body, which is not in the bylaws at all.
So I'm looking at the text of the bylaws and I'm trying to find regular meeting. Oh, okay, I see it. Regular meetings. Yeah.
So can I just say one
Go
thing,
ahead.
Preston? This is Huron. John, I think it's a fair point, and I think that Tristan has fairly stated the spirit of the amendment. I think it's a fair point that we need to do some language cleanup there, and so I would volunteer to do a fast follow amendment to make that language clearer, because I think you are correct that there is some confusion. I think we have an understanding that is Tristan's understanding, but it could be clearer.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Going once. Okay, I think we're going to move into comments then. Starting with Todd. Nope, you gotta have a microphone. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you, Catherine. Aaron, in the corner of my eye. Go ahead, Catherine, go ahead.
So the question is, and I've asked this a few times, we are seeking advice from the law department. And I had hoped that we would also seek advice because so much of our work is related to open law, how we conduct ourselves is related to open law meetings, and that we should establish a relationship, especially in this hybrid world. We don't know what the state legislature is going to say about how permanent what is, and we haven't had that kind of input, but they are available. And I had hoped that we would submit for comment and they can get back to us as well. Have we considered that?
I'm sorry, who?
This is I sent you the name of them. The New York State Committee on whatever they are, who does that.
Gotcha. No.
And they are available. I sent you the name of them. The committee's not well known to me, but it's the committee that oversees open law. And it's a state agency that reports to the legislature that would have update and input information, just as a point of broadening, because especially like, for example, a committee like SLAP, we need to be in line with state policy on how we conduct ourselves so that we can submit comments the way they and input the way they would have it. So that's my suggestion.
Sure,
And
yeah.
question, can we? There you go.
Yeah, I think we totally can submit that. I'm sorry, I must have missed the email. But yeah, the expectation too is the legal department would give us some guidance pertaining to the open meetings law as well, just like they did earlier this year. But we can happy to supplement that as well with this committee.
Thank you, Catherine. Go ahead, Todd.
Okay, Todd Shapiro speaking. I've still got the blue chinos and light blue shirt. Again, speaking as vice chair and part of the leadership team who served with Tristan and my colleagues on this committee, I'm really proud to have done so, and I'm proud of the board. It's the best example of people working together in give and take and coming to reasonable conclusions. And even where we disagreed, these are issues where people can, there is often no one right answer and people can reasonably disagree. But that being said, there is one thing which I'd like to comment on. There is one change before us which I oppose as a matter of principle. Paragraph numeral 1, subsection G, conflict of interest, strikes the long-time broad clause affirming the independence of board members in determining their resolutions and actions on the board. It reads, quote, all members shall serve on the board in their capacity as private citizens only. Their actions shall not be instructed by or responsible to any other organization with which they may be affiliated. Community boards were created as a separate branch of city government in the 60s and 70s, when doubts about the honesty and accountability of other branches of city government led to a series of reforms to reduce the perception of impropriety. To remove it at a time of high public distrust of government and institutions would be short-sighted. The proposed amendment to replace it is a punt to the law in place under the city charter dealing with conflicts of interest as they apply to individual members of the city government, with a more narrow focus on the financial aspects of conflicts of interest. When the law was passed, it was criticized as being too narrow in scope and toothless. To be fair, it is better than no such law at all, but it does not adequately address the appearance of impropriety issue, as does the original text that is being expunged. Reading the text, it speaks of self-reporting by all of us, which is less than compelling. The original section G is a statement of principle that should stay where it is. It represents a ceiling for good government in conflicts. The conflicts law represents a floor. There is no reason why we cannot have both. Approving the amendment would undermine the public trust that community boards rely on. We should keep it. My recommendation is to vote this amendment down and have it go back for reconsideration. There is no reason why we can't come up with an alternative account that accounts for both explicit financial conflicts and the appearance of impropriety.
Go ahead.
Hello. I just want to make a comment for transparency that I've already reached out personally to the law department and received an email back of my concerns from the senior counsel, the legal counsel division, who has informed me that they're already reviewing the bylaws of this community board. These are amendments. You know, the ballot is inaccessible to me. It's a secret ballot. It's very concerning. You know, and other voting is inaccessible. Also, I'm still waiting for my fellow board member to finish voting on my behalf. But again, under the law, someone impartial should be helped me with that. So I'm very concerned about I feel very discriminated against. And I feel there's a lot of ableism, and I'm very disappointed that earlier in the meeting, when people were describing themselves, some members were laughing, and I find that very mocking and discourteous of my fellow board members to do that. So I'm very disappointed, but I'll be reaching out to the Department of Justice again with my concerns after today's meeting, and be following up with the law department with that email with some extra concerns I have. So I do feel very disappointed about what's going on, and also very disappointed for the public who are having no access to how individual members are voting unless they do a very lengthy and complicated freedom of information request. So I just feel it's a sad day for them also, in a way. So
Thank you, Charles. And just to clarify, the change in our approach to voting does not change the reporting in the minutes. So you can all find out, I mean, there's the live document that is available, but doesn't update until sort of the end of the meeting anyway. But all votes will be available in the minutes with names attached to individual votes, just for clarity's sake. Are there any other comments? Janice.
Hello? Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Okay. I want to make 2 points. So I also served on the committee working group for this. And the first point is that I agree with Todd's point. I think Tristan did a fantastic job really summarizing all our discussion and making it very digestible. That said, when it came to like the specific changes in the language, I just wanted to echo again what Todd pointed out about the removal of some original language about how all members' actions shall not be instructed by or responsible to any other organization with which they may be affiliated. I agree that we can keep this in, as I think we've already removed the concern that many people had that people would be, persecuted for their associations with one group or another. That said, and then the second point that I wanted to make, perhaps some of the lawyers in the room can clarify, but there was some language about abiding by the guidance of some advisory committees, and to my understanding, guidance is not enforceable. So I don't know if writing in that we would abide by guidance is appropriate, or if there's like another word that would be more appropriate there.
Thank you, Janice. You're on.
So on the conflict of interest issue, here's what I would like to say. I think the change of this language does nothing to change the conflict of interest laws or restrictions that are on us. As Tristan pointed out, we are not entitled to, we have no authority to create our own conflict of interest policy. We have to abide by the one that exists. The language that was removed was simply removed because it was not exactly the language that's in the city charter and other places, and we refer exactly to that language. So voting to remove that language would not change our conflict of interest policy at all. It would be the same, and it's the one set by the authorities who can set it. We are not entitled to set it ourselves. We're not entitled to police it ourselves, and I think that's really important. I think we may distrust the Conflict of Interest Board or the Law Department. I see no reason to, but they are the ones in charge of this, and if we have any issues, we should take it up with them. They are the experts. We are not.
Thank you. Any other comments? David Sigmund.
Having participated in this process and, for everybody here, the origins of this whole thing kind of came out of the emergency meeting last spring, where we all felt that there were a lot of things going on that were not really addressed adequately in the bylaws. The bylaws had not been amended, I think, in 11 or 12 years. which was way worse than every other community board in our peer group. And the goal of this whole thing, like, I don't doubt that there are going to be things that once the red line is done and the final text is in, people may disagree with some of the language, but that's exactly why we're creating the document. There's now a updated document. There's a process in place to amend it. It ought to be ordinary course of business to review and amend this thing and not leave it untouched for a decade. So, you know, I think these are all valid comments, and I think it's a valid topic. I just think we ought to move on, get something memorialized so that we have something to react to. And I think for the most part, I mean, the goal here was to bring us into maybe even just the latter part of the 20th century, if not the 21st century. And I think, you know, the group has accomplished that. And it's a much more useful document than the old document was. So I just urge, I'll be voting yes, and I would just urge people to do the same.
Thank you, David. Any other comments? Michael.
I just wanted to echo Todd Shapiro's comments, particularly about the conflict of interest paragraph. And I think that it's fine for us to hold ourselves to a higher standard, particularly when we have issues with our mayor being at risk of conflict of interest violations. And even the former head of the law department himself resigned this summer over a conflict of interest issue. So I think that particular language that was placed in there a long time ago is perfectly valid. I don't think it's overreaching. I think we have the ability to set our own rules and hold our own members to a certain level of accountability and standards, and that the law department hasn't really weighed in on that. I mean, I don't know why we would change it and remove it until after they've actually made a statement to that effect. But luckily, the thing is that section, only section B, is the only thing I have any problem with this. The rest of these are great, and it's really great work by the committee. But I also think that we should look at that we shouldn't be limiting our members from speaking in the public session either. And I think there's an irony or a tension that if we think we can create that type of rule, but we can't create, or we can't have a rule about a conflict of interest policy, that's sort of a contradiction to myself. Like, they both can't be true at the same time. So that's the other, I guess, issue I have with that. And just because, so I'll only speak once. What was it? What's the third part of that? Oh, I also liked that we had an ethics committee. And when I was on the board 10, 15 years ago, we actually had people on it. And we had a practice of when you spoke on a topic, you disclosed your other interests in that field. Like if you worked for someone or if you were an investor in something or so, like, and people would voluntarily recuse themselves quite frequently. So I think that actually having an ethics committee and leaving a lot of this language alone, at least until the law department's gotten back to us, until we've thought about it more, there's no reason to sort of just radically change and remove all of this language that served us very well for the past 50, 60 years. And I think we should approve all of the others except for section B. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any other comments? David, go ahead. Well, actually, before I go to David, make sure nobody else has a first comment. Libby.
Hi, Libby here. I would like to make a comment about section C, number 6, session at 1 hour, removing the half-hour minimum. I asked whether or not we've actually gone over that 1 hour previously. And I don't know that that's really a common issue that we have. So I don't really see the need for that because I believe that this is a forum where on the occasion when the public really does feel that this is the place to comment, I really am uncomfortable with that. I think there are other items in this bucket, in C, especially the district manager's report, that are super important. So I just want to go on the record as saying that if this does become an issue, I am happy that we have made other revisions to the bylaws so that we can revisit this as a common practice so that we can do that. But I just wanted to go on record about that, about public comment.
Thank you, Libby. And then I think Mike, you had.
Yeah, I just wanted to report, I had one occasion to call about ethics, and I got a call back from the lawyer who represented the group, the community board, and she said, does it involve money? If it involves money, you have to recuse yourself. If it doesn't involve money, it's kosher.
Thank you, Mike. All right, David, go ahead.
I mean, just to,
That's not.
How about in stereo?
There you go, yeah.
The ethics committee question came up months ago with the law department, and they weighed in at the time and said you shouldn't have an ethics committee, and no, you can't reach your own conclusions about what's ethical or not ethical. So that's why the working group ended up where it did, because we had already heard at the outset of this process on that particular issue. And let me, on Libby's issue on the 1 hour, and, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think ultimately it's the chair's decision on whether we're going to extend these timeframes. So, am I wrong? Is that not the way the language reads? But, if the chair decides that we're going to extend past an hour, I don't think the chair loses his job for violating the terms of the bylaws.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Janice, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I think in regard to the ethics committee, when we discussed it, we figured that since any sort of opinion is an opinion and it's advisory, that's why we were just like, why not keep it in, I guess. And then I just wanted to comment, based on what Yaron said, I want to say that I do actually agree 100% with what you said, and that conflict of interest is defined. Mike Kabak just said the same thing. But I also agree with Todd that I do think this is just like a separate standard. So, this idea that you could remove someone based on conflict of interest, it wouldn't be based on this idea that you shall not be instructed by or responsible to another organization. But I do think it's important to keep that in, because I mean, like, for example, I work for like a book publisher, and if they told me like, go vote, support like the budget for libraries, I think that would be an issue, right? So just something like that, again, wouldn't be a conflict of interest because I'm not personally benefiting. And even my company might not be personally benefiting from that decision, but at the same time, it is something that we want to hold ourselves to as that higher standard.
Thank you, Janice. Todd, go ahead. Well, get a mic first and then go ahead.
Right here. Can anybody hear me? Okay, Todd Shapiro speaking, Same Clothing. So again, as I said earlier, on a lot of these, step back for a second and take into account the theoretical and existential issues we're talking about here. It has to do with the role of community boards and your philosophy about how we approach our task. So I understand the opposing arguments and the deference that we tend to give, or one side of the story tends to give, to the city law department and to the conflict of interest board. But I would point this out, the philosophy that I've served in works something like this. The sentence that was stricken and the approach we take on big picture issues, not as they apply to individuals, but as they apply to larger issues confronting us as a board and to the problems that we face in our community. Those are issues that the community board, and sometimes that will be implicated in legal issues that the city law department might rule on, but we should not consider ourselves bound by that, right? If we as a community board want to make broad statements about policy, and that includes things that we do or issues that involve conflict of interest, not as they apply to individuals, but as they apply to our whole community board and the community that we live in, we should be free to make those statements, right? So it has to do with, do we believe in a broad and independent role for our community board, or something that's much more narrow? I mean, this is a philosophical argument. The bylaws can be changed. And I just urge a lot of new people on the board. These are issues that we'll always be grappling with. I tend to have a broader view, but some people here have a narrower view. And that, if you think about things like the conflict of our ethics committee, or some of these other issues, you come out on different sides of the equation. Anyway, just think about it.
Thank you, Todd. Okay, any other comments? And I will say that we are starting to get close to our quorum, so I would like to try to wrap this up if possible, but if there anyone who hasn't issued a comment? Okay, seeing none. Oh, did I miss one? Sorry. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Catherine. I keep missing your hand. Wait, grab a mic first.
I just want to add, this is Catherine speaking again. I did want to add the name of the committee because I think it's a good working relationship to work on some of these issues. It is the New York State Committee on Open Government. And this is a way to further deepen the conversation. People are passionate and have different experiences, but I think we need to become a learning board, and we need to be learning in this new era as we're approaching all kinds of new dilemmas. There are opportunities that really require us to do some deep digging. That's it.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, any other comments? Okay, seeing none, reminder everyone, please fill out your ballots. So we will give everyone, I'm going to say about 5 minutes or until we see all of the ballots completed, because we will be moving into new business and the ballot will be closing. So if you have any issues, again, please reach out. If you are online, please let us know in the chat and we will assist you there. Go forth and vote. The 30 votes. So before I turn this over to Yaron to read the vote counts for all the actions for tonight, is there anyone here who didn't get their vote counted or wasn't able to vote? Not that they didn't get counted. Okay.
What?
Is there something?
Trying to confirm that you voted, Tom?
No, he wanted to know how the result.
Oh, okay.
You're about to hear.
Okay, so the results tonight. So I already just said that we approved the minutes, 29 in favor with 1 abstain. We approved the decision to hire a consultant for Midtown South, 23 in favor, 5 against, 1 abstained. We approved the landmarks resolution regarding the 5G sort of consulting relationship, or the 5G relationship with the committee, 27 in favor, 2 against, with 1 abstention. We approved the 893 Broadway landmarks application, 29 in favor, with 1 abstention. We approved the Parks and Public Spaces resolution, 29 in favor, with 1 abstention. We approved the Beck's letter on the No Cap Act, 29 in favor, with 1 abstention. We approved the Beck's resolution about Medicaid reimbursement for Bellevue, 27 in favor, 2 against, with 1 abstention. We approved bucket A of the bylaw revisions, 28 in favor, 1 against, with 1 abstention. We approved bucket B of the bylaw amendments, 23 in favor, 23 in favor, 6 against, with 1 abstention. We approved bucket C, 27 in favor, 2 against, with 1 abstention. We approved bucket D, 28 in favor, 1 against, 1 abstention. We approved bucket E, 27 in favor, 2 against, 1 abstention. We approved bucket F, 26 in favor, 3 against, with 1 abstention. And we approved bucket G, 28 in favor, 1 against, with 1 abstention.
All right. Thank you very much, Ron. And thank you, everyone, for a relatively seamless electronic voting foray. So I appreciate that all from everyone. So now I'm going to open the floor up for any new business. Any new business from any members? Go ahead, Mike. Grab a microphone, Mike. Yep. The people online need to know about the course.
Okay, as luck would have it, I have 5 short comments here. Doing comments?
No, we're in new business.
That's right, 5 short new businesses. First of all, there will be a free Garment District tour on next Wednesday, January 22nd at 10:30. Once again, if you're not happy, you get double your money back. If you haven't taken my tour, do it. You're in for a treat. Number 2, congestion pricing on 2nd Avenue. I live on 2nd Avenue and I overlook 2nd Avenue. When I wake up in the morning at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, I'm looking down at the traffic. It's noticeably less on 2nd Avenue going south on 40th Street towards the tunnel, where it's usually backed up like crazy. No longer. It's moving. If you want to get an exception to the pricing, what are we calling this pricing again? The
Congestion pricing.
pricing, I suggest you sign on quick. I went for an exception and I got a date in March. That's 2 weeks ago. So if you're thinking of getting one, it's going to take a while. Do it sooner than later. Also, I want to report that the Landmark Committee this past week had almost 100%, believe it or not, 100% attendance at the Landmark Committee meeting. I think that's worthy of a big round of applause, but hold it till later. And my last comment is, I don't think I mentioned that on Wednesday, there's a free Garment District tour. At 10:30, we meet at the giant yellow button. If you don't know where the giant yellow button, please resign from Community Board 5 immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right. Any other new business? All right. Thank you, everyone. Next, we have the public session. Are there any speakers either in the room or online who would like to speak? As a reminder, at this time, any comment should be about a topic that was not covered during the meeting that they did not speak to the board about during the public hearing. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand to be recognized either in person or virtually. All right. Seeing none, that is all. Thank you very much, everyone.